to the October 21st, 2020 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be aware of what you say, how you say it, what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair recognizes the attendance of our staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, our support staff, Amy, our recording secretary, Susan. If I missed anybody, sorry. And we have a full contingent of commissioners tonight. For the record, the appointed alternate for tonight will be Pat Harris. To the commissioners for commenting, you know I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Let's try not to trip over each other. And I'll remind you all votes need to be done by roll call. When I call your name, state your name and your vote. Excuse me, and it's redundant, but even if you made the motion or the second, I'm still going to ask you to say your vote. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I'll call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. First item, vote minutes, October 7th. Anybody?
Chairman, I reviewed the minutes and I'd move approval as written.
Second, Gladfelter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept as written. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat? You're muted. Oh. Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Betsy, by the way, you're taking care of the quorums, correct?
Yes, I am. Thanks,
All right.
Jamie.
All right. Kevin Newton, this agenda has changed like 27 times, so if I'm out of order, please make me aware of it. I'll do my best, but you know how that works.
Keep an eye on you.
I believe I have the most recent one, but all right. Next up, request for a continuance under notice of intent. Joan Spalaris, 78 Squibnocket Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to seek after-the-fact approval for driveway and front walk modifications, construction of a retaining wall, modifications to the south residential egress, and mitigation plantings.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until November 18th.
Carlo Hawks, so moved.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue until 11/18.
I have a question. What was the reason they gave?
The overlay and resource boundary plans requested by the commission will not be ready in time for the submission tomorrow. This was last week, so.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? All right, Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat? Pat, you're muted.
Harris, aye.
Thank you. Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until 11/18. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First item, Barnes Custom Woodwork LLC, 11 Hiawatha Street, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, an existing dwelling construct a new dwelling, and to reconfigure the driveway. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Arlo Hawks, so moved.
Bird, so move.
Courtney, your second. All right, we have a motion
Okay.
and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Moody, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Paula A. and Richard F. Settee, 64 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a fence. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Moody, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Denisa and Sheldon Wagner, 46 Gosnold Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to reconstruct and reduce the size of an existing deck to construct a new cantilever deck and to install mitigation plantings. Mr. Newton?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Moody, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Lori E. and John E. Cadigan, 11 BB Acres Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to relocate an existing dry well and to construct a pool, patio, and 4-foot fence. Mr. Newton?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Moody, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Paul and Michelle Previtt, trustees, 149 Allen Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct and maintain an addition and steps to relocate an existing dry well, generator, and rinse station, and to demolish the existing garage. Mr. Newton?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Moody, aye.
Maury?
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Sheila and John O'Connor, 118 Waterside Drive, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove an existing deck, storage area, stairs, patio area, crushed stone walkway, and section of the existing dwelling, to remove a portion of an existing stone wall and to conduct necessary repairs to construct and maintain 2 additions, a set of stairs, and a landing, to reconstruct a rent station and patio in kind, and to install a dry well to clear and seed an existing shrub area. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move. And I
Carl Hawks, second.
have a question. Why does this not rise to the level of an order? Is it out, sort of outside the, right on the edge? What's the,
It's in your jurisdiction, but there's a reduction of impervious surface here.
okay,
And no mitigation planting is required.
perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Any further questions or comments? All right. Betsy?
Untitled, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, I.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carl Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, I.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Moving along, Jennifer Rogue, 548 Quaker Road, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to upgrade to a Title V subsurface sewage disposal system. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carl Hawks, second.
Bird, so move.
Got it. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Untitled, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Thank you. Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, I.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carl Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, I.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, Deirdre Carl, trustee, 44 Grand Ave Realty Trust, 44 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise, RAZE, the existing single-family dwelling, garage, and appurtenances to construct and maintain a new single-family dwelling, detached garage, deck, steps, porch, AC unit pad, rent station with all associated utilities, landscaping, and appurtenances, and to install a new Title V sewage disposal system with an increase in design flow. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move. And again, my question is, why not a notice?
Good question. And so this time, your only jurisdiction is land subject to coastal storm flowage, and it's flood zone AE. So there's no resource areas besides that.
Thank you.
Carl Hawks, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any further questions or comments? All right, Betsy? Betsy, you there?
I'm there, but I muted so you didn't have to listen to the puppy. Gladfelter, aye.
Thank you. Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, I.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carl Hawks, aye.
Peter? I'm sorry, I skipped. Pat?
Harris, I.
Peter, now you. Sorry.
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, continued requests for determination of applicability. First one, Richard and Carol Joseph, 95 Waterside Drive, North Falmouth, Mass. Excuse me. For permission to raise, RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling to construct and maintain a new single-family dwelling and garage with associated excuse me, utilities, landscaping, and appurtenances, and to upgrade to a new Title V sewage disposal system with an increase in design flow.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move. And again, my question is, why not on notice?
So this is the same answer as 44 Grand Avenue. So we're working with land subject to coastal storm flowage. Jen, I don't know if you can, if you agree, was there a secondary bank there as well that doesn't have a setback?
Correct. And Courtney, there was an area that was, the neighbors were concerned with, that was questionable for a wetland. And both the staff and the applicant's representative went and investigated. Mark and Kevin both agreed they don't believe it's a wetland.
Fair enough. I just thought I'd ask because it seems like a lot of work. Thank you.
Understandable, Courtney.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Gladfelter, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Are there any more comments or questions? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. All right, next up, requests for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Stephen Cowan, 2 Abby's Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a new concrete foundation under an existing dwelling. Jen? Jen, you with us?
Unmute.
Sorry about that. I'll repeat what I just said to myself. Obviously, I have promoted Richard Servant up from Steinbeck and Taylor to present the project for the applicant. Mr. Servant, would you like me to promote the applicant up as a panelist as well?
Yes, that might be helpful. And
Okay,
I was
thank
also
you.
wondering if I could share my screen, or do you have a PDF to review?
If you could share your screen, sir, that would be great.
Excellent. I'm going to do that
Mr.
now.
Cohen, I am promoting Mr. Cohen up as the property owner. Steve Cohen is the property owner.
Okay, we ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, my name is Richard Servant, representing Mr. Cohen on this project at 2 Abby's Lane. We have a single family home here that was built in approximately 1920. As you can see on the plan, the lot slopes fairly significantly from the street bound towards some significant resource areas out in the back there. We have several resource areas. We have a coastal bank, as you can see in brown here, one right behind the house, one a little further down associated with the land subject to coastal storm flowage. Also a freshwater bordering wetland that's further out in the back here, northwest of the site, which has been flagged. There's also a vernal pool located southwest of the house. They have it labeled as potential. We had it flagged, and I'm treating it as if it were a vernal pool for this project. It was kind of late in the season to make the real determination on it. So we moved forward as if it were a vernal pool. Because of this, essentially the project is to replace and construct a new foundation under the existing home. The current foundation is in poor condition. It consists of cedar posts and concrete blocks. It's really not sufficient for supporting this structure. What the homeowner would like to do is to construct a new 8-inch concrete foundation under the house. We're not proposing to expand the structure or move it in any way on the lot. There's an existing deck to the rear, which will be lifted also and left as is, along with the stairways as shown. So no changes to the footprint of the structure. What we're planning to do is to elevate the home in place with a building mover. Will elevate the home, excavate beneath the home, and construct a new foundation underneath while it's elevated. We've took some special care with the erosion control. And I don't know if you've had a chance to go out to the site, but it's a pretty steep slope here. It slopes right down to these resource areas in the back. I've proposed an erosion control barrier, kind of a 3-tiered proposal here. We've got a silt sock, firstly, a stake silt sock. Behind that will be a siltation fence, which will be, the bottom will be set at a minimum of 4 inches below the grade. And behind those two is a straw bale row to back up the two of those. Would we feel it would be sufficient to protect the house, protect the resource areas during excavation from any runoff? I believe I've got all the resource and buffers areas shown correctly on here. That's essentially what we'd like to do. I think another important part of this is we're not proposing to stockpile any material on the site. The contractor is going to have to remove any excavated material from the site each day, properly truck it off site and store it. So we don't have any piles here that are going to wash down during any storm event. We've also got this stone access area here off of Abbey to access the site. There's currently a thick hedge there that's in front of the site. They're going to have to open up a portion of that hedge to work the site from Abbey Street, proposing some crushed stone just to prevent any trucks tracking dirt and silt out into the road. And I'll answer any questions you might have. That's essentially what we're hoping to do here.
Thank you, sir. If you would stop sharing.
I'll try to do that. Stop sharing. Excellent.
Thank you. Jen, do you want to start?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The only other comment we had would be that the staff should inspect that erosion control line prior to excavation. The reason we had this under a notice was just because of that incredible slope behind the house, and we wanted to make sure that wetland was protected. So I think they did a good job with their erosion control plan, and we're just going to recommend a special condition that the staff, go out and inspect that, obviously, prior to excavation. And it's, good to hear that they plan to remove the material from the site each day because there's not a lot of room to work over there. Kevin Newton, anything to add?
No, I just want to say Richard had contacted me long before this notice had been put in to discuss the project and get a sense for some of our concerns. And I thought that was productive. And other than that, I really don't have really any concerns with this.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go with commissioner comments. Betsy.
My only comment is that this was a well thought out project, although it's a very tight area, and I'd love to go by and see when they're actually doing this work. But I appreciate that the plan was so clear, and the obvious thing when you went out there was how are you going to prevent erosion into that area. So it was good. Thank you.
Courtney.
I will echo Betsy's comments, and my only other question would be, have you selected a contractor to do this?
Not to my knowledge, Commissioner Byrd. I'm not sure of that. I believe that the homeowner and the builder have, but I'm not privy to who that is at this time.
I would like to see it conditioned that, that there be a meeting on site with a contractor before the work starts.
Okay, Courtney, we'll add that as a special condition.
No other questions. It's a good, well thought out project and it'll make a difference.
Thank you. I agree. I think there's a lot of planning and put into this. Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mark?
I have no comments.
Maury?
No comments. Good project.
Pat?
No comments.
Peter?
Well-planned project.
Steve?
No comments.
Jen, is there any public chat or questions?
There is there is a chat, but it's not related to this project yet, so no chats regarding this project.
Thank you.
Well, I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Gladfelter.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Trinity. Aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed.
I'd like to thank you, and I appreciate your positive comments. I did put a lot of time and effort into this plan, and I'm glad it showed.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that too, believe me.
It's good to hear. Thank you. Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
All right, next up, Ralph and Michelle Cataldo, 0 Bridge Street, Lot 41, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a single-family dwelling with a garage, deck, and driveway with all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping, and to install a Title V sewage disposal system. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking for, oh, there he is. I'm looking for Mr. Borselli to promote up as a panelist. I'm promoting Mike Borselli up as a panelist so he can present the project. Mike, is there anybody else I'm promoting up for this one?
Hi, folks. There's no one else to promote up, but Mr. Cataldo, the applicant and property owner and actually general contractor for the project, is in my office. And if there's comments or questions for him, he will take over from this position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, Ralph Cataldo, who I just mentioned is here with me. I was almost going to say here in the audience, like the old days, but I can't. So we're here tonight to make a presentation to construct a single-family dwelling on this lot. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to share the screen.
Please.
All right. The site plan before you is a plan of existing conditions on the lot. I'm showing this plan so I can outline the wetland resources and other existing conditions of note. So the property is located on the corner of Bridge Street and Manat Road. It's actually right at the intersection as well with Acapesket Road, which heads in a northerly direction on the left side of the plan where I'm showing with the mouse. Manat Road goes in this direction, and this is the approach to the bridge. To the east and southeast is Green Pond. The wetland resources of note include land under the ocean, land subject to tidal action. There is a coastal beach. There's a narrow band of salt marsh. There is a low profile 4 to 5 foot in height coastal bank. It is eroding. The lot is also in a land subject to coastal storm flowage. in this case, AE 12 from this blue boundary landward. The corresponding notice disturbance zone A and outer buffer zone Bs are shown on the plan. In this case, the 100-foot no disturbance zone A to salt marsh is shown in a green color. In this case, because the bank is eroding, the no disturbance zone A is 75 feet, and it's this orange color. And the corresponding outer buffer zone B to that coastal bank is also shown. The proposed plan. So the proposed plan has been designed with the buffer regulations found at FWR 10.18 closely monitored and followed. By that I mean we have strategically placed the limit of work in a position where it is at the boundary of the most landward edge of the no disturbance zone A, in this case to salt marsh. The house has actually been designed specifically by architect Denise Benoli in consultation with our office and Mr. Cataldo, such that it balances the setbacks from this very busy intersection with Manat Road and this somewhat dangerous location in close proximity to Manat Road with the driveway on Bridge Street. We also kept in mind orientation for a potential view. We would come back at a later date and apply for an amendment to have a vista pruning window once there's a better understanding of the view from this location. So the house is a 3-bedroom house. It has an attached 2-car garage. There's a Title V septic system placed as far as possible from the wetland resources. And we've actually located it in a place under the driveway so that the number of trees in the front yard that would need to be cut will be minimized. And the trees will help buffer from the noise traffic on Manat Road. There is a deck attached to the house. There are a series of eastern red cedars proposed to be planted along the boundary of Manat Road. These will act as a visual and audible screen from Manat Road to help provide privacy from the busy street. We're proposing dry wells around the existing house to contain roof runoff. This buffer is completely undeveloped. So in that situation, there's not a requirement for mitigation planting because you haven't altered the no disturbance zone A, but there is a requirement to do some improvement. So we're proposing to locate additional native plantings along the limit of work in all locations where possible to delineate the boundary. These would be Arrowwood viburnum, shade tolerant. We have consulted with Teresa Sprague from Blue Flax Design on what are the best species of shrubs to plant in these locations. We have also located, as with another recent project that you reviewed in the same situation with an undisturbed buffer, all of the trees within 25 feet of the limit of work so that there's a record of these trees. We have been working very closely with Mr. Cataldo to properly site the house and be cognizant of concerns you may have about alteration near the limit of work, to the point where We've done study and analysis and are very confident that the house can be constructed in this location without any impact to the no disturbance zone. Mr. Cataldo, as you probably know, is a very experienced contractor in Falmouth. He has constructed over almost, I think, close to 200 waterfront homes in Falmouth for various clients that have come before this board through the years. He's very much aware of the performance standards and sensitivity of doing construction near wetlands. This is his own personal home. He intends to reside here. He will be the general contractor. So in all cases, the buck stops with Ralph. For the future, if this project is approved, we will come back for three things under an amendment, which is the appropriate way. One of the first of the three things is a vista pruning, as I had mentioned earlier. The second is a location for a proposed path. We haven't really selected a path location. We had contemplated showing a path, but then we thought it would be best to wait until the house is under construction and there's a better sense of how the land will be used to gain access to the waterfront. And the third thing that we're going to come back for is Ralph wants to try to enhance the buffer with more trees in areas that are open. And by that, I mean in areas where I'm circling with the mouse, there's a lot of open areas with opportunities to plant additional trees. He intends to walk the site and do a more detailed analysis with Blue Flax Design and come up with a plan that would enhance the buffer further with additional trees. So those three things will come back for under an amendment if you vote to approve this project. And I think that sums up the presentation. I am here, as well as Ralph, to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Borselli. Jen and or Kevin, you want to start?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you've all received the staff report. Just change something here. Hang on 1 second, Mr. Chairman. There we go. You've all received the staff report. I think the commission, staff's major concern is the proximity of this structure to that limited work. One, the regulations say that the limited work should lie landward of Zone A. It is right on top of that Zone A line, so it is really close. And two, you're looking at 3.5 feet for excavation of that foundation of that house to the limit of work. Some of those trees, that corner 14-inch oak is only 5 feet from that corner of that foundation. Those root systems will be damaged during that excavation. That's one of those 10-inch oaks, again, close to that kind of northeast section of the house is only 8 feet from the excavated foundation. An overdig is 3 feet for that foundation, so that's giving you a half a foot. The staff feels very strongly that this structure should be shifted back towards the road, and I believe there is some room to do that, so that the appropriate 10-foot kind of space between that Zone A buffer and the structure is maintained. Going forward, when there's maintenance on the structure, 3.5 feet from that no disturbance line is it's not appropriate or enough space to be able to maintain that structure. So that was clearly written in our staff report. Again, it's being able to maintain the structure once constructed. It's being able to do that foundation, be able to construct that house without disturbing that no disturbance zone. Again, the staff is concerned with some of the root systems of the trees nearest to the limit of work. And again, I think there is room. I've seen some really creative reserve areas, so I think there is room to kind of shift that house closer. I know, being on that corner is not ideal, but again, the applicant, was well aware of the property when it was purchased. The only other question I had, Mike, the driveway, is it paved, gravel?
We want to reserve our right to pave the driveway.
Okay, well, we were just curious. It wasn't on the plan, so we were just kind of curious
We haven't
what the
decided.
material would be.
It's likely to be pavement.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And I think that's about it. And then once you saw in our staff report, pursuant to your regulations and the Wetlands Protection Act, there should be a condition that no coastal armoring be allowed anytime in the future to protect the structure. This is an eroding coastal bank. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, they made a really great effort to kind of maintain those buffer zones, so that was nice to see. Unfortunately, there just needs to be a little bit more shifting of that house to give the room for construction, and again, future maintenance around the property is really key as well.
Kevin,
That's
you
all
have
I have, unless Kevin has anything to add. Kevin Newton.
No, Mr. Chairman, I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, you said Ralph is with you. Is Mr. Cataldo aware about that? That he won't be able to come back for a bulkhead revetment or a seawall, anything like that?
Yes. Yeah, we're aware of that. We may, I'm assuming that doesn't include a soft solution like Chlorure fiberols, which are routinely reviewed. There may be a time where we file a new application for that. I assume that isn't considered armoring because it's done routinely on other properties.
Okay, just as long as they're aware, you're.
I'm not making a comment on that at this time, Mr. Chairman.
As long as he's aware of that regulation, just so for future consideration. Is there any rinse station or generator pad or anything? Was it going to be outside the or inside the limit of work?
It hadn't been contemplated at this point, so we would come back for an amendment when we do the vista pruning for those elements, once they're determined, unless, the generator in the garage side. It's likely to be on the garage side, outside both A and B buffer zones. Same with the rinse station, but that's what the plan is.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Mr. Byrd.
I don't have any other questions. Jen pretty much raised the same issues that I would have raised, and particularly about the setback to Zone A.
Okay.
Other than that, I think it's a good project.
Good. Kevin O'Brien.
No comments at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mark.
I have no comments either.
Maury.
I would concur with Jen on the distance for the dig, but other than that, the project is a good project, just too close to the edge.
Pat.
A couple of comments. One is that the limit of work, I would like to hear a little bit more about the specifics of how the applicant believes that they can, in fact, do the construction so close to the Zone A without causing harm to the Zone A. And I would defer to the members of the commission who have construction and building expertise to give us some guidance on that as well. And secondly, there is a provision in the preamble to 1018 sub 1. It's the last paragraph, and it says, if the no disturbance zone is in a naturally vegetated state, the commission will include a no structure zone adjacent to the no disturbance zone.
Mhm.
And that gets back to the concerns being raised by Jen earlier, that construction could cause damage to the no disturbance zone, but also if the structure is so close to the no disturbance zone, just natural use of the land would result potentially in spillover activities into the no disturbance zone. That's
Is
all.
it- Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate to speak to that now or wait for other comments?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, Pat, because I was going to make some comments when I heard all of the commissioners' comments. I wanted to have a little bit of a dialogue on that if I could, and re-share my screen if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So we're very much aware of the no structure zone. And in most cases, this flexibility and ability to provide a greater no structure zone than we are providing in this one location. And so perspective is important when you consider these things. So for perspective purposes, I first want to point out this one section is 22.5 feet. That in that one section is 3.5 feet from the limit of work. So it's routine when in cases where you have the room to provide 10 feet. But it's also important to understand that the balance of the foundation excavation, which is here, is 15.5 feet from the limit of work at the closest point. This is all much further from the limit of work. The only portion of the house that would be closer, and even so is greater than this section, is the edge of a deck, which is a low profile deck. It's about 2.5 feet off the ground. There's sonotube footings proposed that would be set back. So for perspective purposes, it's only this location. Now, additionally, I'd like to share with you a cross section that was prepared by the architect Denise Benoli. And this shows basically a trench that is dug 3 feet below ground, and then a hand dug footing would be placed for what we commonly call a frost wall. And this is the existing grade in that location close to the limit of work. And this would be a concrete slab, basically at grade in accordance with the flood standards. So the digging is only this red line. And we've interviewed local excavator, we've interviewed a local foundation contractor that they both work with Mr. Cataldo on a daily basis. And they have both suggested that this is routine and can be done, and there's no concern with the excavation portion. Now, I know there's other concerns with being closer. So, but I wanted to give you that perspective. That 122.5 foot section is only being dug that deep. And to further provide that perspective, Mr. Cataldo is showing what 3 feet is. That would be the depth that is dug in that section. And this is generally the understory in that section where the digging would occur. So 3 feet is very much doable. It has been thought out. We were aware of the possible concern. In fact, I did have a conversation with Jen about it. As far as maintenance, the only maintenance on that section would utilize a pump jack with staging. In the distance, this separation distance is what, 3 feet? 32 inches. So the only work that needs to be done on that side of the house, once the frost wall is installed, is siding windows, paint. In fact, the framing and the wall that is constructed here would be framed from the deck of the building and then raised from this side. So there's absolutely no need for heavy equipment or anything else other than the pump jacks for this section. So we did think this out. We knew that to be discussion, and we were hoping we could persuade you that it can be done. So I wanted to have a little bit of dialogue about that. There's two contractors on the board that have experience, and perhaps they have a different perspective now that I have described the construction methodology in that area before we have to consider a shift of the house.
Thank you, Mr. Boselli. If you would stop sharing, please.
Yes, sir.
Pat, I don't know if you were finished or not.
I am, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Peter.
I agree with Jen. No questions.
Okay. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Mr. Baselli was working on the neighboring property, I was commented that at least there won't be one beside it. I am impressed that he was able to fit in the house and structures on that lot. It's a challenging lot, and I'd like to continue this discussion about whether construction is possible within that close to the limit of work.
Okay. Betsy.
The only comment I have, and it's completely different from the discussion everybody's having right now, but it's a state requirement that it be written in that there can't be a hard structure on the coastal bank that Jen mentioned in the beginning. It's an eroding coastal bank in the velocity zone.
Okay. All right.
Jamie, may I just make a comment? I just wanted to remind the board that this issue came up at another property in East Falmouth where the board was asked to reduce the distance between the limit of work and the structure to 5 feet. The board held your 10-foot, that 10-foot limit. You were basically taken to court and you did prevail on that 10-foot limit of work because of the damage that can be done to the no disturbance zone with construction like this. I appreciate that Mr. Cataldo has, has tried to really think this through, but there is room on that lot to shift that structure to maintain the appropriate distance. And it will just, going forward, just be much better for that structure to be that 10 feet away from that no disturbance zone. So the board can have some sort of assurance that it won't be encroached on. Not only could you damage the root systems of some of the trees along that limit of work, but you're also going to heavily limb them as well to build that structure. And you don't want to have that structure right up where you have tree limbs coming in. So again, I appreciate the applicant and Falmouth Engineering, looking at it, but I do feel strongly that this can and should be shifted away from that no disturbance zone in accordance with, past rulings of the court and regulations and past practices of this board.
Okay. Mike, I have a question on the, that lot is on a corner. So are you calling Bridge Street the front?
Yes,
And that's allowing you to get closer to Manat Road, correct?
that's correct. There's a bylaw that allows that. Yes.
Yeah.
Zoning bylaw. Yes.
Yep. Thank you. Jen, is there anything in the public comment section?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so, Mike, I'm sure it's clear, but we kind of have some resistance to that 10-foot, the lack of 10-foot.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear from two qualified contractors on the commission about our methodology and your opinions about what we described. And also, I think everyone is aware of the qualifications of the contractor. So we were hopeful that you could consider something less than 10 feet, frankly, for that one section, for all the reasons I just described. So Jen did mention another project, but we would think it's appropriate that you could lessen your unwritten policy about 10 feet. There is a written requirement for a no structure zone, but there's no specific distance. And it's probably written that way because it should be a case-by-case basis. Now, this site is very flat. There's no potential for erosion. We could shift this some, but 10 feet will create some significant difficulties in the design. And we're hopeful that you could consider something that's on the order of 5 or 6 feet in this section. We could also not do the foundation. We could cantilever a section and step back the foundation and just have a 5 to 6 foot separation from a cantilevered section, and have the foundation end up being 8 or 9 feet from the limit of work, as sort of a happy medium between the two options of the drastic shift to provide 10 feet and what we've proposed. So we were hoping you could contemplate and consider something like that.
Jen, do you have something?
Me? I mean, I'm just going to say that this board, if you start going down this road of modifying that 10-foot that you have consistently applied to past projects, we're going to end up right where we were 8 to 10 years ago with these 1 and 2 foot limits of work. That is why this board really decided to take a strong stance on these 10-foot limits of work between the limit of work and the structure, these 10-foot no structure zones, because we were getting into, just like today, these situations where, oh, this can be done. And then during construction, staff goes out, there's construction materials over the limit of work. Eventually there's encroachment, because it's just human nature that there's going to be encroachment. When you have, you saw Mr. Cataldo's picture, that's how close, that was 3 feet. That's how close this structure, 3.5, add another half a foot. That's how close this structure is going to be to the no disturbance zone. There's going to be damage to trees in that no disturbance zone, damage to like the structures of those trees, damage to the root systems of those trees. And the staff's gonna hold, strong with we really do feel that a 10-foot no structure zone between that limit of work and this house should be maintained.
Amy, can I comment?
Yes, sir.
First of all, Mike, can I ask you a direct question? On the house in the area that we're concerned about, is that a 1-story, 2 stories? What is that?
2-story cape, 3 bedrooms. It's a 2-story cape.
Okay, so therefore the roof line, that is where the gutters and stuff are, they're gonna be at what, 16 to 20 feet above grade?
That's fair.
Okay. Ralph should know about this, because when he was building a house over in West Falmouth, behind the Chappaquake Grill, I was building another house next door to him. And I was faced with exactly the situation that we now have, in that the engineer succeeded in convincing the Conservation Commission, before I became the builder, to have a limit of work on one side of the house, 2 feet from the edge of the marsh. And that included exactly the issues you're talking about, excavating for a foundation, as well as trying to build, to install windows, construct the addition, put the siding on, install the gutters. As a matter of fact, Dutch Drolet, who was doing the gutter work, I'm sure Ralph knows him, sent his men up onto the roof, and they had to be suspended by ropes off of the roof in order to put the gutters on, because they were so close to the limit of work. I went before the Conservation Commission and asked permission, and I think maybe Maury was on the board then, to see if they would be willing to temporarily allow me to move the limit of work further toward the marsh for the time of construction, because I knew I couldn't possibly build that thing without debris from the construction going into the marsh. It was an impossible situation. And in fact, I gotta say, one of the reasons that I got on the commission was over that whole construction project. It convinced me that I needed to have a voice of construction on the board. And now I see this situation coming in front of us. And so I have to say, this 10-foot rule that we, or policy, or whatever you want to call it, that we instituted over the last years since I've been on the commission, going back to 2003, is not a misplaced idea. It's based on the realities of having to build a house. Not only construction overdigs, we had to deal with that in that situation, and we had cantilever and all the stuff you're talking about. But just working that close and not being able, it's impossible not to have trash and things end up in the marsh. And I know from the standpoint of crews on the site, nobody's going to be looking over their shoulder every day, and you're going to see ladders across the line over the limit of work area. And I don't care how careful you are, that's what's going to happen, because it's too tight. So I honestly think there's a good reason for that 10-foot rule, and I think that it needs to be utilized here.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else they want to add?
Sorry, Ralph.
I do. I can see the consensus, I guess. Is there any give and take on the 10 feet at all? Is there anything less than 10? Is 10 a hard 10?
Yeah, my 10's kind of it. I mean,
okay.
I would like to comment on Courtney's comments that I remember the project he was talking about very well. And I've actually seen several other ones where we, after that we gave and took a little more and less, and they really don't work out well. You can't even put a ladder up to clean the gutter. So I will stick with Jen's 10-foot and the board's 10-foot that we've been very consistent on.
yeah, and just to, confirm, it's not just the construction, it's the maintenance too.
Mhm.
So, Mike, I don't know if you got cut off.
It also just allows a house to breathe a little bit more when you're not surrounded by vegetation. A lot of times the staff will go out and vegetation is so close to the house doesn't have a chance to breathe. So there are a lot of different issues. So that's another reason why. Sorry, Mike.
No, hey, I understand what you're saying. So my final question is, if there's no other issues, is this something that warrants a continuance? Can you allow it to close and with the condition that we shift the house to provide the 10 feet, or do you need me to continue the hearing?
I think I think a continuance is warranted, Mike, just so the board can see the plan.
All right. I guess in that case, we'd like a continuance to the 4th, which is 2 weeks from today.
Give me 1 second, Mike. Kevin, do we have any RDAs on the 4th? Newton? Okay,
Let me tell you, I just wrote it up. We
4
have,
notices and 1 amended.
we have 4 notices, 1 amended. Yep.
Perfect. You can have the 4th, Mr. Porcelli.
All right, great. I appreciate it.
So
So,
at the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to November 4th.
Bird, second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until November 4th. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Fellow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until November 4th. Thank you, Mr. Borselli. Thank you, Mr. Cataldo.
Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you. Thank you.
Next up, Town of Falmouth, Department of Public Works, 0 Manat Road, parcel 45-20-002-000, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct beach nourishment and to construct 2 rubble mound groins. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, give me 1 moment. I need to promote a project team up. I am promoting John Ramsey of Applied Coastal. I am promoting Jim McLaughlin, your town engineer. John, is there anybody else I'm promoting up for this one?
I think it's just me and Jim.
Just you and Jim. Okay, excellent.
All right, Mr. Ramsey, you're up.
Okay, I was gonna let Jim introduce me if he wants to go first, and then I just grab the project.
Sure.
Could we see both of you gentlemen? There's Jim.
Hi, Jim.
I'm coming.
Evening.
How's that?
And there's John.
So thank you, Jen and Mr. Chairman. James McLaughlin, Town Engineer. And this is a project that we've discussed previously on Manat Beach, Nourishment and Groins that are proposed in conjunction with the Bournes Pond Bridge project. You recall this past summer, we received an extension on the order of conditions for that project, and with the intention of coming back with a notice of intent for the beach nourishment, which is the final piece of the overall project. John with Applied Coastal Research and Engineering has been working on this project for a number of years, both the bridge project as well as the nourishment project. And without further introduction, I will turn it over to John and ask him to go through the presentation that he's made to a number of commissions and boards in town over the last few years regarding this project.
Okay, if I can share my screen, that would, if everybody's okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just a second. Technical difficulties on my end.
You're up.
Okay. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to do a quick presentation. As Jim had mentioned, we've presented this in front of several boards over the past several years. And this is the last piece that we really need to make the Bournes Pond inlet widening a successful project. One of the things that was pointed out when we were first looking at that project is how rapidly the west side of Manat Beach is eroding and how soon we're likely to get to the point where that shoreline would erode all the way back to the road. And a lot of that has to do, and I'm not going to go into any detail with this, but a lot of that has to do with the relocation of the inlet in 1985. I'm sure most of you are aware that this is a very man-altered barrier beach system where the inlet used to be. There's an old bridge that we'll be removing, but that was where the old inlet was, much further to the west. And so a lot of the dilapidated structures associated with that are actually part of the removal for this project as well. Just a quick background. The town did receive a CZM Coastal Resilience Grant to first look at options here, and that's why this has been kind of in the works over a couple-year process. And after that was completed, and a bunch of the state agencies weighed in on the options that we were looking at, we did an expanded environmental notification form this past spring and received a favorable certificate from NEPA to go forward with the approach that we had come up with through that resilience grant. So in general, what we're looking at doing is actually placing approximately 22,500 cubic yards of sand on the beach. Some of this material would be sourced from the inlet widening project, but we're anticipating that more than half of it is going to need to be brought in by truck from another site. In addition, we're looking at constructing 2 rubble mound groins. This area, again, was part of the old, area that was east of the old inlet. There were coastal engineering structures at the time. And so this area is basically a remnant of a ebb shoal area and a stabilized area. And obviously when they moved the inlet, this area became very unstable and erosion rapidly increased once the offshore sediment started disappearing. So as part of the whole process here, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, we're talking about constructing 2 groins. It's not something that we ever look forward to doing. It's a challenging process in itself. We feel that these are needed, and we showed that through a bunch of numerical modeling analysis in the resilience grant and the environmental notification form, that these structures would inhibit material moving into Bourne's Pond entrance. So one of the things that we're very cognizant of is if we place nourishment alone here, we are going to get material that's going to go into the entrance and likely require much more frequent dredging of Bourne's Pond Inlet, if not clog the inlet initially. This was actually seen when in 2009, there was some nourishment material placed from the Woods Hole dredging. In the following subsequent years, there was significant shoaling in Bourne's Pond. While you couldn't say that it was directly linked, it did appear that there was likely a direct link between that placement and the shoaling in Bourne's Pond, which needed to be dredged with a drag line, which obviously is very expensive and not something that anybody in the town, DPW or other, want to deal with on an ongoing basis. Basically, one of the things we're looking at is to make sure that we have a nourishment that's the appropriate dimensions, so that we're not having it migrate into places that do not want to impact other resource areas. So we're really looking at just widening the coastal beach and building this beach basically in front of the existing dune system for the most part. The berm's going to be constructed up to an elevation of about 5 feet NAVD, which NAVD is about mean sea level. And we're looking at having that elevation be slightly above the elevation of Manat Road. If you look at Manat Road, it's on the order of about 4.5 feet. And so this is actually, if again, looking at it from the parking lot standpoint of Manat parking lot west of the inlet, this is again about a half foot higher than that parking lot. Right now we have time of year restriction, because of the various time of year restrictions, November to February. And I'll probably talk about this a little bit more, but one of the things we had hoped for was October to February. We did get a letter from Division of Marine Fisheries that is asking for November 1st. And we know that February is obviously when, end of February is when plovers may start showing up. So we look at that as a really hard deadline. We're hoping that maybe through the Army Corps process that we could negotiate with the fisheries people to maybe push the beginning back to October, which would allow a wider window. It's not that we can't live with the November to February. Just from a construction standpoint, we'd like to open it up if possible. Just to put some numbers on this, obviously this is a project that has some significant resource impacts. But obviously the purpose of this project is for shore protection, and is being done in a generally soft manner other than the hard structures that we're proposing. And I'll talk about how we're balancing that whole effort in just a second. But just to put some square footages on things, it's in the notice of intent. Land under the ocean, about 124,000. So we're looking at somewhere around 3 acres. Coastal beach, 98,000 square feet of area that will be created. Coastal dunes, we are looking at basically placing material up against some of the lower existing dune along that upper beach there. It's about 8,700 square feet. Land containing shellfish. One of the things that we did submit recently was an eelgrass and shellfish evaluation. And while there is quote unquote area of land containing shellfish on the fronting beach, there were no shellfish observed. That's really mainly would be considered scallop habitat. And if there was eelgrass there, then we likely see that. But again, this is a very high energy beach area, as I'm sure you're well aware. So even though it's mapped as land containing shellfish, there really are no shellfish resources on the fronting beach. And then of course, land subject to coastal storm flowage. We are, the square footage is 102,000 square feet. But I would like to point out, again, obviously all of Manat Road, this whole barrier beach system is all land subject to coastal storm flowage. It goes underwater by about 8 or 9 feet during a 100-year storm. So this is not an area that is not going to be impacted by a major storm. It is something where when we have a hurricane, the water goes over this road and then recedes very quickly, usually over a period of about 3 hours. So the concept of the groins, this is something that we've have done in a few other places. It started when we were doing work on Winthrop Beach about 15 years ago. Very often coastal engineering structures that were constructed in the past were not always placed in the best locations, as I think we're all well aware. I mean, we've all seen the coasts along Falmouth and other towns where we see coastal engineering structures that may function well and some that don't function at all. Maybe too close together, maybe too far apart. Specifically, groins are something that really needs some analysis to look at what the appropriate spacing is. We tried to optimize these groins. Initially we were looking at just trying to put in one. We were not able to successfully put one groin in to hold the beach the way we wanted. So we looked at 2 shorter groins. But what we were really aiming at was being able to do what we refer to as structure trading, where we are removing dilapidated structures that are non-functional and trading that area for something that is a functional structure. So in this case, what we were looking to do is take the area of the old jetty, which is over here, if you can see my pointer, and then part of the old roadway revetment, because this is the old Manat Road that used to go across the bridge. There's a dilapidated revetment that's out in the water. And trading that square footage area for the area footprint of the structures that we're proposing. And that's the basis of trying to do a one-to-one trade or exceeding that. And this is something that was, as I mentioned, was approved at Winthrop Beach, and it was actually also approved in New Bedford recently for a similar project to this. So this is the existing conditions plan. Again, these are the structures we're talking about removing for the trade. But we are also talking about removing the bridge structure, the old bridge structure and the abutments, as well as the concrete foundation that is basically bifurcating the beach. So you really can't get by at much of any tide at this point. So, again, one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure we remove those structures. But I do want to be clear about that. These upland structures, both the bridge and the foundation from the old dwelling that used to be there, are not considered part of the structure trade area that we're looking at for the coastal engineering structures. And this is what the general proposal of what we're doing. Question came up as to what the different shadings meant. And so basically the dark shading is the flat part of the berm. That's, excuse me, that's the area that will be at 5 feet above mean sea level. So will be the flat beach area. Then because that's slightly higher than the parking lot, it will actually slope back to the parking lot, and then it will slope on a 1-on-10 slope going offshore. So again, that's going to increase the area, the beach resources quite a bit. I also like to point out that that is actually going to bury the groins for the most part. Only the tips of the groins will be showing. So although these structures look massive, they're very similar to some other structures that you may see elsewhere. Probably Falmouth is not a great example, but if you go further east down Cape and Harwich, some of the groins there have pretty wide nourishments, and they're buried basically what's called filled to entrapment. So the nourishment basically goes all the way up to the toe of the structure, and then the structure is allowed to bypass natural material that continues to come in the system, but it is able to hold the beach that is placed there, the nourished beach that is placed there. Couple things I'd like to point out, because I know that some of the questions came up as far as monitoring. So this is our baseline here. I just want to point out that we do have a baseline that we would be having stations that we'd be running monitoring transects off of. Another thing, when we're talking with the town, one of the things that came up is we're actually talking about making sure that there's an access way after we're done taking out the bridge. We're talking about making sure that that path is restored, and adding 2 handicap spots here on basically on the existing old roadway. So we're actually looking at restoring that area so that it can be at least used for handicap parking and have access down to the beach in that location. And again, because of the removal of this structure as well as the foundation next door, basically access along the beach will not be inhibited. And again, these upper parts of the groins will be buried, so you'll be able to walk right over the top of those without them being in the way. And this gives you an idea from a cross section. These are the 2 groins, and you can actually see the surface of the nourishment is a little bit above the groin structure, and then it slopes on the 1 and 10 all the way down to the toe of the structure. Same thing here, and you also see that slight angle back on the back side. This one is right at the parking lot, so you can see the slight increase in elevation right at where the beach parking lot is right behind. So this just goes to the transects. I just want to make sure I try to cover some of the questions that were asked in the staff report. We are putting transects, short perpendicular transects at 10-foot or 100-foot intervals, along the beach, and they're going out about approximately 400 feet. And so that they would be going out from that baseline, so you can get the stationing off the baseline as to how we would be monitoring this. We're looking at monitoring this for every, I think it's annually. But certainly we are more than willing to come up with whatever type of reporting you would like. Normally we would do it after 1, 3, and 5 years, because usually you get the most change over the first year, and you get an idea of how this is changing over that rapid time period. But it is something that certainly is more than willing to discuss how the nourishment is migrating over time. Some questions were asked about how the work is being done. Talking with Jim earlier, and I know that Jen's been working with him as far as doing, looking at doing some drone surveying of all of the town beaches. So that is something that we're aware of, but we want to make sure that at least for this, that we are running these transects out into the water. So that would be done with boat as necessary, as well as in the surf zone, using an RTK system. And the RTK is pictured on the right there. What we do is we set a line of stakes where and basically have a person walk with this RTK GPS, and that's a real-time kinematic GPS. So it gets X, Y, and Z to sub-centimeter accuracy. So it's an electronic instrument that grabs the X, Y, and Z data, and basically at every slope change, we're grabbing a point. So it's grabbing a point every couple seconds, and we just walk that line out. And then in the water, it's the same thing. You have an RTK on your boat, and you have a fathometer, and the RTK corrects the elevation in real time to get the actual water elevation. So you don't really actually have to measure tides, which is very helpful. And obviously this work would be overseen by a professional engineer in our office. Some questions came up about sediment compatibility. As I said, what material we can get from the site, we will. And basically with the inlet widening, We do see that there may be some availability for material. It's unlikely that the material inside of the inlet is going to be necessarily compatible with this, and that may best be used on the dunes east of the inlet, or some of the dunes in this area as part of the bridge project, which, some of that nourishment's already been permitted. What we're looking for here is some fairly coarse sand. We want to make sure it stays in place. Some of the material that's likely excavated from when we are moving the east jetty further east, that material likely will be compatible, but it will be tested, and we're looking at testing material every 1,000 cubic yards. That would be done by the contractor to make sure that that material is compatible. And certainly, we would also do visual checks on it as well if they run into a layer of something, and if material is brought from an upland source, we would obviously be, sourcing it and then also doing the same level of checks on it. But we are looking at material that is, somewhere on the order of 1 millimeter average grain size, which is pretty coarse sand, but that's what exists there now. And with that, I can probably open it up to questions. I know that there are probably some questions about sediment transport and some other issues, and I'm more than happy to answer those. I do have a couple more slides that might be best just for questions as they come up. So I'll try to unshare my screen here if I can work that out.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
If I can do that. Asking me to leave the meeting. I don't think you guys want me to do that just yet.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry.
Mr. Laughlin, do you have anything you want to add before we go to staff?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Jen and or Kevin.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. John, can you describe what kind of alternatives you looked at as opposed to this particular design?
Okay. So as part of the process with CCM, we looked at beach nourishment alone. As I said, we looked at several different groin alternatives, and the reason why we started going the route of groins in the first place was no matter which nourishment alternative, and again, when I say several alternatives, different placements, different widths, etc., to really achieve the goal. And I won't put the slide up, but if anybody has looked at the ENF, one of the things that comes out is basically we put a line along the road and looked at different places along the road and how soon the shoreline would get back to that road. And it really is basically somewhere in the order of 30 to 35 years, the shoreline is going to get back to the road. So with that in mind, we were looking, from a design standpoint, we were looking at trying to make sure that we had a project that could sustain, make sure that it could sustain the road in a way that was not going to get back there basically ever, but at the same time, something that the town could easily maintain and not create problems for the inlet. And so no matter what nourishment option alone we tried, we were impacting sediment going into the inlet in a drastic way. And then so we looked at a series of groin alternatives. As I said, the single groin alternative, we went up to 4 groins, very short groins. We looked at, we did look at different materials of wood groins versus armor stone groins. And it really came down to that, none of those structures in this case really are something that is viable for a long-term solution here. The wood groins are, again, in a non-public setting, they're not too bad. But I will say that in public beaches, they tend to become quite the impediment. There are some out in the vineyard that have been more of a nuisance than a success. But yeah, so a lot of what we looked at was groins and just nourishment alone.
Okay, thank you, John. So I'm going to ask some questions that, don't have anything to do with the groins. Lucky you. How do you propose to remove? So talk to me about the methodology of removing the bridge abutments, and then that old foundation. Because I don't even see, unless I'm missing it, I don't even really see the old foundation on Foth's plan.
Right. And I will say that it's not on there because we don't know the limit of it. And I didn't, I could put the front corner of it on there. But one of the reasons why we didn't show it is we're looking at this as Jim and I have talked about this as just an item that this is going to have to be kind of a cubic yard by the cubic yard removal by the contractor. This is going to be something that is just basically broken up on site. So, I mean, and just hopefully broken up with, probably with a headache ball. And again, you have to remember that this project is going to be done when the bridge work is being done. So this whole area is basically going to be closed off. And, we're basically going to break that up. And then I'm also aware that there are wood piles underneath that foundation. And those are going to need to be ripped out as best we can. We can't guarantee we're going to rip out every single one to the greatest level because they might fall apart, and we're not going to dig up the dune to do it. But we are going to, scrape off the top of the foundation, remove all the concrete, and grab what piles we can. Unfortunately, no plans for the bridge exist. So again, we're stuck with that same problem. We really don't know how deep that foundation is, but we do want to remove that foundation. If possible, we want to take the whole foundation out. But if it's on piles and the piles are well seated in it, we may end up just breaking off the top of the bridge foundation and removing that. And, again, the deck removal is not that big of a deal. However, we are also aware that, and as you are as well, Jen, that there's an old asbestos water line somewhere in the mix. And we are cognizant of that, but we also know if we run into that's going to create some other issues. So it's very difficult to show on a plan exactly how we would do that. But we are, the town is committed, the DPW is committed to doing it. But I'm not exactly sure how to show it on the plan, if that makes sense.
I've been chasing that water main and those pilings with the DPW for many, many years. It's like, quick and grab what we can when it's exposed.
And I will say, Jen, the other thing, you saw that we're talking about removing that jetty over on the, on the other side there, the old part of the old jetty.
I'm getting to that.
Okay. Yeah, but there are some piles over there as well.
Oh yeah, and just pull those when we're over there.
Yes.
Just get them out of there.
Yes.
So in that area where that old foundation is, it's causing everybody such a headache. We're going to reestablish the dune system in that area, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the little wetland swale in the back, how are we going to protect that little wetland swale in the back?
I mean, right now, the way this is looking is that area is actually in the footprint of some of the nourishment from the already approved project.
Oh, I have questions about that one too. So what do you mean, what's in the footprint of the?
I believe the old foundation is, so there, basically they use the footprint of what the nourishment from 2009 and the previously approved nourishment.
Yeah.
So so there is an ability under that existing order to actually place nourishment in that area. And I believe some of that nourishment was actually on the dune in that area.
Okay, so what I'm just wondering is, we're going to recreate the dunes in that area. How are we going to protect that little interdunal swale wetland in the back?
We are going to leave that in, and if there's something that we need to do, as far as if you're thinking of some sort of
I'm going to get into details.
Yeah, some wattles or something like that. Yeah, we certainly can do that. Again, I'm not quite sure with the sand being placed. I mean, I think over time that is going to fill in naturally. I know it's going to take decades, we know, but I mean, I view that as kind of a migratory wetland as opposed to something that's real. But at the same time, we can certainly put in some protections.
Okay. How are you proposing to remove that old groin structure, the old kind of roadway revetment you're talking about? How are you proposing to remove it?
Yeah, so I think I had a slide there. We're everybody always asks me, "You're going to use a barge?" I'm like, "No, we're not going to use a barge." So the way we're going to remove that is as we're doing nourishment, as we're bringing in fill, we're going to remove what we can reach from the beach, and then as we're bringing in fill, as we fill out, we will be removing that as we fill out, because that is all underneath the footprint of our beach nourishment. So beach nourishment will be being brought in, and that material and that stuff will be removed as we fill out to it. Does that make sense?
So you're going to build the groins before you remove the little groin and the material.
Well, this goes to the.
So that's what I'm wondering. What goes first? I want a construction methodology. I told you, I want the construction methodology for the groins, but I also want to know how we're going to remove that revetment, because we're truly going to allow these groins and that revetment has to go. And then I'm going to go on about why aren't we removing more of that, like subtitle revetment further west, if we really just want to kind of really.
Right, and I think part of this goes to, because what we're basically doing is we're trying to remove the what we're going to have access to. So in order to remove this, we're going to have to fill out the beach, and that is going to be, a temporary type thing. First off, we're going to be basically removing the as much of the existing revetment that we can reach. And with that, we should be able to start building the groin that's further east. And so as that's constructed, then we will be able to start filling out and then start and basically using that as the platform to take apart the rest of the revetment as we're building out.
Okay.
So we can certainly, develop something, a construction methodology, or, list out how we envision that being and make sure that's part of the construction methodology. But again, that's really the only way they're going to be able to do it anyways. And I do not want just Nourishment out there, especially if we don't aren't able to keep our window back into October. Because if it's just November to February, that was my concern was, if we start placing fill and we don't have it stabilized, that we're going to end up with more problems in the inlet than we're going to be happy with.
Yeah, and just to clarify for the board, it could have been misleading to some of the commissioners and some of the public. You had time of year restriction November to February. That's actually your construction window.
That's my construction window. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
your
right
construction
now,
window is November to February. So your time of year restriction is February to November.
right, March to
March
October.
to, yeah.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
it was just kind of, you had time of year restriction, November to February. And I'm like,
Right. So I'm trying to get my time of construction from October 1st to
I just
February
wanted to
28th.
clarify that
Yeah,
for the
that's fine.
commission.
Sorry.
Just wanted to clarify that for the commission.
We always get stuck doing winter work. We know
Yeah.
that.
So the little groin that was in yellow or blue that you showed on one of your very first slides, is
Yes.
that groin that we're going to shorten and use that structure to lengthen the west side of the existing jetty when we go in to do the bridge? Because you're going to remove the east jetty, but you're lengthening that west jetty, correct?
We are lengthening the west jetty, but we are also shortening the jetty or the groin that's right next to it. There was a
Isn't that
trade.
the little one you had? Is that the one you had circled? I can't remember how many jetties are out. The groins are out.
So there's a groin right now that's probably about 100 feet west. Sorry, yes, 100 feet west of the west jetty. That groin under the old project, the project's already permitted. That is being shortened by 25 feet.
Is that the one you showed earlier in your PowerPoint that was circled, but it was yellow circled, not blue circled?
I don't think so. The one that we had yellow circled is the jetty that is for the old inlet. That's way over.
No. John, go back to your PowerPoint.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I'm just, so we have the jetty. How many existing groins do we have out there in addition to the jetty right now? Is there just that one? I can't remember.
We just have one groin, and we have
the jetty.
And we have an old dilapidated jetty that's is this the figure you're talking about?
Well, I can't see the figure.
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. That would be helpful.
No.
Let me try that again. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so this figure is the one you're talking about?
Yep. So no, the other figure where you had them circled. So a couple slides before that one. That existing groin you have in yellow. Nope. Okay. The existing groin in yellow.
Yes, that's an existing groin. Yes, but that one's going to be shortened by 25 feet.
That's the one that's being shortened, and then the west jetty is being lengthened.
The west jetty to the inlet is being lengthened, yes.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right, but the stones, we're not necessarily, when you ask me whether we're reusing the rock, I'm not sure if we are or not.
No, I meant just the structure trade kind of deal, not
Yep.
using the existing rocks, I just wanted to make sure that that's the jetty. I remembered that we were shortening in order to lengthen the west jetty. That's all. It was just, it's not a trick question. It's just a question. Trying to remember correctly.
It was just a color thing that I couldn't remember.
Okay. Another thing that we were kind of, that we just felt was important to know is the nourishment material and how that quality control is going to take place to make sure that we have compatible material out there. So you said every 1,000 cubic yards. Now, who's going to be responsible for that? What kind of reporting is going to be done on that? Are you going to have somebody on site looking at this material?
Oh, we'll definitely have somebody on site looking at the material. I mean, there will be a resident engineer on site because this will be part of the overall bridge project. And they will, as part of the contracting, they will be required to provide us with samples at every 1,000 yards.
Every 1,000 cubic yards.
Yep.
So when you're coming from an upland source, how many truckloads is that?
Well, I mean, again, we're probably bringing in about a third to a half of the material just from the project itself.
But I thought a lot of the project, I thought a significant amount of the nourishment was going to build up the east side dunes.
There is a portion that is, and that's the portion that's coming out of the pond. But we also have a physical excavation to widen the inlet. And we're hoping that material is what's going to be compatible with the beach here. And if it's not, then we're not going to be able to use it. But if it is, we're planning on using that, which is going to basically cut the truckloads down. But if you are looking at, if we had to do the full amount, you're looking at 1,000 truckloads over 4 months. If we can get half of it, then you're looking at 500.
500. Okay. I just trying to just get a number. That's all.
Yep. Yeah. So just assume somewhere around 22 yards a truck.
Okay. And John, why didn't we go further with removing some of that subtidal intertidal structure even more to the west? I think when you and I had a discussion, if you go further west, there's that little kind of almost
kiddie pool, the kiddie pool.
Yeah, something.
I
it's
think
on town property. It's obviously an impediment to sediment transport. Why wouldn't we, while we're doing this whole project, remove some of that as well?
I think part of the problem is because it's not something we can easily reach because it's not in the footprint of the nourishment. That is something, if our nourishment extended further west, which we didn't really try to do, then we could have built a platform out to it to remove it. But basically, I went as far as we could within the footprint to try to remove everything that we could get at.
Okay. I think, John, it would be helpful for our records and to condition it if we did have a little bit of a more detailed kind of methodology on, and I know it's an unknown when you're getting into that dune system and you're getting into that old foundation. And I know we don't have plans of that old bridge. We've been chasing that old road at least for 10 years since I've been here. So I was wondering if you could just kind of write up a little bit of a more detailed methodology on how we might be removing those structures. Knowing there is an unknown, because I've witnessed some of those pilings being pulled out. I know how deep they go. I know they are. And I don't know if they're underneath that foundation, and I don't know if they're underneath that bridge. But I've seen the DPW like almost tipping machines forward, trying to just rock those pilings out of the water.
Right. And I think that, and I guess, we will come up with a methodology or we'll be able to write something up. I think for everybody on the board, I think this is a great opportunity to do this because the contractor is going to have the kind of equipment that doesn't need to tip over to try to pull this stuff out.
No, I know. The DPW has done a great job when this stuff gets exposed to remove it as quickly as possible from that area. As well as, a more like written down. I don't think we read that you'll be testing the material every 1,000 feet. So to have something written in the record would, would be helpful for us when we're conditioning it and discussing the project going forward. So I think something about where the material is coming from, how it's going to be tested, knowing there again that we don't know if the material coming out of the inlet widening is going to be able to be used, but if so, this is the methodology. If not, then we'll go with this.
Okay. Yep.
And I think, Kevin, did I cover everything? Oh, and you explained how that old revetment was found. And I think I'm done for right now, John.
Okay. I'm sure somebody will have a couple questions.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. Oh, I do have one more question. You said that once that old bridge is removed, we're just going to be kind of making a path, kind of like a path through like that. A whole area will be like part of the dunes that we're creating, but we'll be making an public access kind of path from those handicap parking spaces down to the beach, correct?
Right. So we're basically looking at keeping that grade the same as the level of the bridge. So we're not going to be creating a dune there. We're just going to be creating the path to basically, because you do have the old roadway there. It's basically a path anyways.
Yeah, but then that scarp goes down. You're going to have to soften that kind of, but you'll be doing
there won't
berm and everything else.
The scarp won't exist because the nourishment will be right.
Yeah, the berm will be there, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Oh, and just to clarify, the eelgrass survey was done in early September?
Yes, mid-September, yes.
Mid-September. Okay, I'll go with Betsy on that one. I think they say that they should be done from June to October, so mid-September is kind of on a later end, but okay. Thank you. Does Kevin Newton, do you have any follow-up questions from staff?
No, I think you asked most of our questions, if not all of them. And if I think of something, I'll be sure to bring it up throughout the deliberation here.
Oh, and just one technical thing, John. Can you have a surveyor from Falmouth stamp their plans for me, please? I need a survey stamp on it as well as yours.
Oh, you need Edwin, why is that? Is that just for property? There's no property lines on here, are there?
Oh, we always ask for a surveyor stamp, so.
Okay.
You good?
I am good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Kevin O'Brien, we're going to start with you.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
There's nothing left to ask. Mark.
It doesn't look like you plan to plant anything on this rather extended beach once you finish with all the nourishment. Is that right?
That's correct. We're looking at, because it is beach and it's, it's basically just at 5 feet. We're not looking at actually planting the beach. We're just going to let the dune, if the dune migrates out there, then, there is pretty extensive dune behind there right now.
Yeah, well, this is probably the only place in Falmouth where in my mind it makes any sense to try to plant beach grass where it would have a chance to actually trap floating sand and accumulate something to the dune. Maybe not the whole thing, obviously, but maybe the back 50 feet or whatever it is to try to give the natural processes a chance to entrap some sand and help the dune increase. And probably under most circumstances, there won't be much erosion because of the groins are so massive sticking out there.
I think one of the concerns with doing that is actually the plovers. So, I mean, it's not that we can't plant, but we would certainly need to, work with the endangered species folks because they do get concerned about planting in areas where plovers have nested in the past. And, for good or bad, we are going to attract plovers when we nourish this beach. There's no doubt.
Well, that beach
Yes, you will.
That beach is going to be very deep once you're done from, mean high inland, a lot of sand.
Right. It is.
And beach grass to help nourish it too. That's all. It seems to me It's probably the only place in Falmouth where it actually makes sense to plant beach grass on a beach because it's nice, very gentle, well protected with groins.
Okay, and we certainly take that under advisement. What we can do is we can actually reach out to Natural Heritage and just see what they think of that possibility. I don't want to get in a
Great.
a battle.
Good. I like that. Thank you. That's all.
Especially, let me just jump in here, John and Mark, especially John, in the area where you're removing that old foundation. That might be a great area.
Okay, yep, I agree. Okay.
Lori,
I have a couple questions actually. First for Jen. Do we have any of the last Manat project monitoring reports that have they ever been submitted?
No. But we are working with the town, and the town does now was appropriated some money at the last town meeting to do annual beach nourishment profiles for all the beaches. So we are starting to work with Jim. Actually just got us a quote from a company to do some drone surveys for all the town beaches. But if we did have some surveys, they're very scattered, Maury. I mean, I know the town I think Jim, I did send the DPW out to do some surveys out there at some point, but I think that's when the beach was really eroding, Maury. So on an annual basis, we have not received them, but
So
I do think they have some information from beaches out there where they have gone out to try to do that transect work. It's just, it's a lot for the town engineering department.
Well, I'm not so worried about all the beaches. I'm worried about the beaches we keep dumping sand on. And if this project does move forward, then I want to see in a line item in the bid that goes out that shows the cost of monitoring this, because it always gets left out. It never gets done. I can name project after project after project in this town that we put the order of conditions of monitoring and we don't get the information. And Bourne's Pond got inundated with the last sand nourishment that destroyed beautiful shellfish beds. And we have not discussed any windblown sand from this. It's all about shore movement into the eelgrass beds. But we also have extreme wind there that moves that sand across Manat Road into Bourne's Pond, which is the whole reason we're here, actually, for trying to keep that pond open and flushed and dredging and jetties and this $1 billion project. The windblown sand, no engineers ever put that in their analysis of how much of it crosses the road. And you can go to Chapcoit Road any winter and watch hundreds and hundreds of cubic yards go across that parking lot into where it gets trapped or over into South Basin where it starts to fill in. So I just want to make sure on this project that we have the funds to monitor that area so that we can learn from our mistakes, which we already made a big one last time when we put the sand on that beach and ruined Bourne's Pond's shellfishing. So that's a little angst, as you know, Jen, that I've had for a long time.
I understand more.
Yep. The other question I have on the time of year restrictions, reading through all of the notice of intent between winter flounder, juvenile fish, horseshoe crabs, and plovers. It looks like between February to November. So I just want to make sure that none of those resources are impacted by this. And it gives you guys literally a 120-day window, which is really small. And I just want to make sure that the planning is so well laid that there aren't hiccups that, you come back to us and say, oh, well, we can't, the weather was really bad. We couldn't get out there. And all of a sudden we're in, the horseshoe crab migration. You're going out, if I'm not mistaken, about 100 feet that you're putting sand out to the old revetment where there used to be a beach. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So I know that we as, humans want to build this all up so that we have a road and we protect all of our, man-made structures, water lines and everything else, and bridges and roadways. But obviously the horseshoe crabs and everybody else really doesn't care about our roads and our water lines and our foundations and whatever. So I just want to make sure that we're not impacting, pushing non-compatible sand out 100 and something feet, because this is huge horseshoe crab and winter flounder and juvenile fish breeding areas. And last question I had, how are you shortening the jetty? Methodology for that.
How are we shortening which jetty?
The existing jetty that you said you're going to shorten.
That's part of the bridge project. That's part of the bridge project, more. That's not part of this one. I was just clarifying that that was part of the bridge project.
Okay. All right. I didn't see it in here. And when you just spoke about it, okay, thank you.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to confuse the board. I was just trying to get in my mind that that jetty is already, that little groin's already spoken for.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a trick
I told
question.
my staff, it already has a date to the dance. It's already part of this project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is it okay if I respond to it, just a couple of those, just to help a little bit, maybe? As far as the monitoring goes, I don't know how it was done for the last project, but typically when we're dealing with monitoring, it's going to be in the Army Corps permit and the DEP permit. It is going to be something that's in the contract. There's no way anybody's going to get out of doing it. We do it routinely for other projects. So and it ends up, at least I've never seen it where people are, skate by and don't do it. But I can guarantee that Coastal Zone Management and DEP are going to make sure that it's in every single permit. So we will be required to do it, not only do it, but provide the reports to you, DEP, and the Army Corps. And the time of year restriction, as I had mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're hoping to do is also grab October. But that is something that we, Division of Marine Fisheries also comments on the core process, and National Marine Fisheries Service will be involved with that process. I guess what we'd like to do is kind of defer to that time period and see if we can widen our window a little bit. Ideally, I would like to get some of this work done in a calmer period. I realize the springtime is not a good time relative to all of the both endangered species and fish issues, as well as horseshoe crabs as we get later in the season. But we're hoping that we can maybe widen the fall window just a little bit, and maybe just for rock work potentially. So we'll see how that works out. But we may at least like to reserve the concept of maybe coming back to you if that's granted in the core process.
Thank you for that. It makes me feel better to know that your firm is, committed to the follow-up. Because I think we would have learned a lot from the last Nourishment, grain size and, all of that. If we had had that information, it would have helped you as well. And
it certainly would. Yes.
Good, Maury?
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat,
I have no comments.
Peter?
I just want to say that it's a good project and most of the people in Falmouth look forward to it.
Agreed. Steve?
Thank you. This is for Jim, if I could. In the area where you're putting the 2 handicap parking spots, as part of the acquisition of the western end of the beach by the town, there was supposed to be installed a drop-off spot. And I wondered, in your design, can we work that into it?
Yes, I think John has indicated the area for the spaces, but it was our intent to file a separate notice of intent for that particular project, including the drop-off using Foster Road and which is private, and the existing Manat Road that right now is closed off and also continues on to the bridge area. to incorporate the drop-off area there so that we'll have a good spot to be able to drop off people, as well as the two handicap spaces, and using, as John mentioned, the existing roadway as a pathway down to the beach area. That's something that we're working on as a town project, separate from the nourishment portion of it.
Thank you. Perfect answer.
All right. Betsy,
I have a question for Jim too. And that is, do you have any idea when all this is going to take place?
Well, I have an idea of when I hope it will take place.
Yeah, that's good. That's good enough for me.
I think what we're hoping to do is get through the permitting for this aspect of the project through the winter and springtime, and be able to put the job out to bid in during the summer months, with the expectation that we'd be able to do the work next fall, starting in either October or November, depending on what the time of year is that we're allowed to work. But the intent is to be underway in the fall, not only for the time of year restriction, but also to avoid the impacts on the summer season. So, but then the project itself will be, right now we're anticipating it's going to be a 2-year project. So it'll be through one full summer where we'll have the road closed. It'll be accessible from either end, but the beaches will be accessible from either the east or the west side, but the through road itself will be closed off.
So you're hoping to start full 2021 and be finished spring 2023.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Thanks.
Courtney.
No questions there. They've all been asked and answered.
Mhm. Yes, they have. Jen, do we have anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Do we need a continuance, Jen, for the methodologies questions you're asking?
We do. And just another quick question, John. Is there any, I mean, I know we're going to be widening that inlet, and this is kind of, and I don't know if there's a way you can do this, because you keep, I'm looking for a methodology on this and monitoring on this project, but you keep saying the two projects are going to be kind of coexisting. They're going to kind of be blended together. They're going to be taken as one. Is there any way to kind of write that out in that way for us so that we can kind of see that? And going back, is there any, and I can't remember from the bridge project, and help me, I didn't re-review that project. Is there any monitoring for Bourne's Pond itself? Any kind of water quality monitoring during this process or anything like that?
Yeah, since I didn't actually do the permitting, it makes it a little challenging to answer that. I know there's eelgrass monitoring. I do not, and I know that there's ongoing water quality monitoring having to do with looking at the improvements, hopefully, to water quality with the inlet widening. But
Okay.
I do not know if there's anything else, specific to any more detailed monitoring. There
Okay.
certainly are not beach profiles.
Okay, so beach profiles will be done in this one. You'll be writing that up for me. Going back to Mark's comment, I know on the east side for the bridge project, there were these big massive dunes being created, and you had an extensive planting, or there was an extensive planting plan associated with that. Why aren't we seeing that on this west side?
The reason why you're not seeing on the west side is that is actually building up dunes on the east side. I mean, we're mounding things and making them into dunes and wanting them to perform as dunes. This is really widening of the beach. I mean, the platform is basically slightly higher than the parking lot, but it is going to be a flat beach nourishment. I mean, this is not intended to be a storm, a dune. I mean, on this side, we generally have a pretty good dune along much of it. So we're not as concerned, but it's, it was not an intent to actually build up the dune.
So we're not building up the dune in front of that parking lot anymore.
Not at the moment. No, we're not intending to do that. So we're leaving the dune the way it is, and understanding that the town right now, I mean, obviously has the piles of sand built up there as an artificial dune.
But they're really not doing anything.
I realize that, but they would do something if there was beach in front of it. I mean, right now
Yeah.
they don't have the ability to buffer anything.
Yeah, but this goes to Mark's comment about why we aren't planting that area. Because if we want, like, if there was beach in front of the dunes would hold it, but those dunes need to be vegetated. So,
I hear what you're saying. I think one of the concerns there, I mean, this side of the beach, partially because of that 2009 project and partially before it, I mean, it has historically been a plover area. And, we've dealt with this before, when we were in Chatham, actually doing a project there. The Natural Heritage actually came in and asked for beach grass to be removed on a dune. So I'm a little bit, and maybe it's just a consultation. Give us a chance to consult with Natural Heritage, and I'm more than happy to come back with a comment to maybe I can fill you in on that as well.
no, it's just a question because I remember like the dune kind of proposal on the east side, and it was like building up these dunes. It was this extensive planting plan with the dunes. So I'm just not seeing why we're not seeing that mirrored on this side.
Right. And I think it's because of, that we do have a dune system that already exists, and we were not planning on expanding it, I guess, or making it higher. It's actually, on the east side, you're actually trying to make the dunes as high as they are on the west side already. And I don't think there's really a room to put a dune unless we widen the beach even more in front of the parking lot. I don't think that's a viable alternative at this point.
So you're going to kind of clarify, where the material's coming from, how we're going to monitor it for quality, basically quality control almost, for compatibility, kind of our methodology on how we're moving the structures, like building up the dune, removing the structures, making a note that it's going to be part of the contract for monitoring. Anything, guys? You're going to consult with Natural Heritage on planting, and we'll go from there. And just going back to filling those jetties up to those groins up to entrapment, you don't come to the top of that groin. You leave part of the end of that groin exposed, right?
The tip of the groin is exposed. The trunk of it is covered initially.
Okay.
So you're basically filling, having the taper right down to the toe, and that will allow sand to carry on around it over time.
Okay.
I did have one more question, Jamie, for John. I know I was asking about monitoring. Are you going to monitor Bourne's Pond as well for the windblown transport?
I understand what you're saying. Windblown transport's a hard thing to monitor because the way it comes in, at the rate that it comes in, and how far it spreads. So it is a challenge. We had not planned on doing that just because it may, when I look at I've shellfished in there and I know how shallow it is, but, because it's the old shoal, the old flood shoal that's in there that people shellfish on, we may see a little bit of growth in there over time, but I'm not quite sure, whether that's more likely coming from the dune system that is finer grain sand, but because again, we're trying to bring in some pretty coarse grain sand here. So we're hoping that one of the reasons, there's two reasons why we want the coarse grain sand is one, that doesn't as easily transport with waves, but it also doesn't as easily transport with wind. So we are hoping that this is going to be a bit more stable, or quite a bit more stable than the stuff that was brought in 2009. That's the concept. But I can't say we're not going to have windblown sand, but I'm not quite sure how to effectively monitor it. And I don't mean to be dodging it. I'm not quite sure.
Well, that was, when on the 2009 Nourishment, Bourne's Pond was to be monitored. So I don't know how they were planning to do it.
Can't you do a bathymetric study of it?
We certainly can. I
pages?
just think that even if it's hundreds of cubic yards, as you're concerned about, it is going to be spread out over such a large area that it'll be hard to actually detect.
Well, it wasn't hard to detect in 2009. That's what Maury's saying.
Right, and if you're looking for us to do some monitoring, like if there's shoaling that's coming in the inlet entrance as opposed to windblown, we can certainly do that, because I think that's where you saw most of your shoaling was actually stuff that was entering the inlet,
It
not
is.
necessarily windblown.
It is. And, you know, you can put a drone up and you can actually see where it's shoaling.
Oh, I'm well aware. I mean, part of this project, we certainly looked at that. So I'm more than, if you would like us to put together some monitoring for, looking at shoaling coming in the entrance, that would be helpful to the town. And I think that is something that we can throw in here as well in the monitoring.
Well, when we were in 2009, we were told that the littoral movement of all the sand was from east to west. And,
Not from west to east?
West to east.
West to east.
Yeah.
West to east, it was.
I'm sorry.
It was getting sucked into Bourne's Pond because all the material is being basically placed on the west side of Manat.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at my old thing because that was.
No,
when
it's
we
west to
crossed
east.
the road. I know, we had one Woods Hole report said it was west to east and the next Woods Hole report was from east to west. So I just want to make sure whichever way it goes, we know where it is ending up.
Yeah, and we anticipate that this material is going to migrate towards Bourne's Pond Inlet, the stuff that gets around the tip of the jetties or to the tip of the groins. So we can certainly put together some monitoring, some bathymetry monitoring to look at the inside as well. I wouldn't suggest maybe running that for 5 years, but maybe like for the first 2 years, just to see if there's a concern, if that makes sense.
Or after a major storm.
Major storm, yeah.
Okay.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, Jamie, I have a question. Just a comment. John, I was curious as to your analysis of how the sand would affect the current inlet, but given that there was going to be a new bridge and a new inlet, which is fine, and several of us, maybe most of us knew, I mean, Maury, certainly, Courtney, Jamie, those of us who were on the board when we permitted the bridge, but there's some people who weren't aware of that bridge project. And so this project people were a little bit confused. And so I got some questions on it. But I mean, tonight's presentation, I think, made it clear how all of this is tied together. It's a big project for a little town.
And there's no doubt. I mean, and this is a very challenging site. So we're very cognizant of the issues. And ideally it would have been nice to tackle all of it at once. It's just that this issue or this concern came up very late in the bridge or the inlet widening process, and so ended up getting separated out. But it is certainly from a contractual standpoint, they're tied together because it's easier to do all of this at once. But from a functional standpoint, you could easily do these as two separate projects and be completely independent. So there is a good break from it. But again, I think from a functional standpoint, especially when I look at the structural removal aspect, having the heavy equipment that's going to be out there when we're doing bridge work is going to be critical for getting that stuff out of there. And rather than trying to get a new contractor in to get all that material, that's really kind of ancillary to a nourishment project.
I think during the bridge project, John, I'm the one that said we really needed to get that foundation out of there when we weren't just going to bury it again, because eventually it's just going to be exposed, and whoever's sitting in a room or on Zoom or however we're going to be in 15 years, they would be dealing with the same problems. So let's just get it out of there. Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, Mr. Ramsey, you're gonna be looking, or Mr. McLaughlin, you're gonna be looking for a continuance?
I'm sure we are.
John, how much time do you need?
I see that you said the November 4th is full, right?
Well, I mean, could you get us the stuff by next Wednesday? Can you have a consult with Natural Heritage and?
Yeah, I'm not gonna promise that.
by-
So, yeah, so maybe the next meeting after that would be.
That is gonna be the 18th.
18th, okay.
We already have two, if you'll be the second continued notice, and we already have a couple of enforcements. So we'll have to see how the 18th plays out, but right now you can have the 18th, John.
At the request of the applicant, someone else is saying it too. At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to November 18th.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until November 18th. Betsy,
Yeah, Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
All shy.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right, is unanimous. This hearing is continued until November 18th. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Next up, William and Karen M. Curley, 40 Green Harbor Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a new front entry porch and vestibule, install a dry well, and to install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thomas, can we remove Mike Borselli as a panelist and put him back down into the attendees list, please? Thomas or Adriana, one of the two. Thank you. Hi, Tom.
Hi, how are you all?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Got the notice been read? It's time for me to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will share my screen then and move right into it. How's that? Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is just the locus map up here. The site is on Green Harbor Road. It's number 40 Green Harbor Road. So it's on a little inlet or tributary from Green Pond, south of Manat Road and near Vineyard Sound. I will zoom out a bit here to show. So this is that little inlet or arm of Green Pond, not the main body of Green Pond down here. And the existing house, I put in the narrative that it recently rebuilt this swimming pool under previous notice and got compliance. And now the Curleys would like to rebuild this entry porch. You can say the resource area is being, we have a flood zone, VE elevation 15 along the shore, and of course the 25-foot wetland regulation velocity zone running through this location. Otherwise, inland, it's flood zone AE elevation 13, and the ground is at around elevation 7 to 8 in this location. We have a coastal bank running through here, where the slope is 10 to 1 or steeper in this location, and we show there's obviously land under a water body, though I don't have that labeled here, but that is. We have the coastal bank zone A in this location, land subject to tidal action. Zone A going through part of the house, and then tidal action zone B and Coastal Bank Zone B covering much of the rest of the lot back here. And so this colored in area is where the work is proposed to be. And in the mitigation calculations, or I'll show you briefly a little enlargement here. The existing walk is coming in through here, and this grayish tone is the walk leading up to this lighter colored, the entry. There's basically just a landing and one step. And so what they want to build is there's an entry vestibule going out about as far as a little further than the existing landing, and then a porch, which is 4 feet. The entire structure is 15.3 feet wide, plus another step. So you see much of that is above existing coverage. A little bit of it is in the zone A of the coastal bank, and the remaining coverage is in zone B area. And so the coverage calculations we get down here. So we have a 6 square feet and 2 square feet of coverage in zone A and 68 square feet of increase in coverage in B. So we come up with a total of 140 square feet of mitigation required. I have a couple, let me see, a couple pictures here I can show you. Not sure which one we have first, but coming up. Okay, that is the existing front of the house, as you can see, and another view, and this is the existing landing and the front step. And so you can see there's just lawn, mulch, and a couple of boxwood shrubs here, as you can see. And the this is the existing, which from a couple of years ago, but this is the existing non-native landscaping that's along the waterfront right here. And a little more here, some ornamental grass and some rose, and a little further to the left. So, well, in there was a gate leading to the neighbor's house, and then there's a gate coming out here to the lawn. So the mitigation is proposed to be, so we have mapped out here, so colored, but this is the existing non-native planting bed right here with the grasses and the rose right here, and then some up in this corner. So what we're proposing to do is to remove this amount that's directly along the top of the bank or above the riprap area, remove this amount of non-native planting and move it up into these colored areas, and then plant all of this with native shrubs. This is 140 square feet, and what was right in here is going to be moved back to make the room for that native planting going right in this location. So that is the proposal. You'll have certainly no negative impacts. It's far on the other side of the house from the resource areas, and as I pointed out, there's no native vegetation that's going to be disturbed, from this work. So I'll take any questions. I'll stop the share.
Thank you, Tom. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The only question we had, Tom, was the existing walk. Is that going to be removed, or is that going?
No, I had replied to that. That's not being, when I mentioned the walk to be removed, I was referring to the walk that's under the proposed entry.
Okay.
Not the entire walk, no.
Okay, thank you.
You good?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sorry about that.
All right. Maury?
I have no problem with the project, but it doesn't look like a very Falmouth-friendly lawn.
That's probably true.
Well, please remind your client that there are standard conditions that they won't be able to use fertilizer within 100 feet of a resource area under the nutrient bylaw and under this order, an order of conditions if issued.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pat?
I don't have any comments.
Sorry, Pat, I didn't hear you.
Oh,
No comments.
Thank you. Peter?
No comments.
Steve?
Comments.
Betsy?
No comments either.
Courtney?
Neither Midnight or I have any comments.
Kevin?
Good.
No comments.
Mark?
no comments.
Thank you. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Not related to this project, Mr. Chairman. Only about Courtney's cat.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to close the
Oh,
hearing.
wait. Oh, no. No,
Take it
we're all
under
set.
advisement. Gladfelter.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Ernie, aye.
Maury?
Fellow Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Bunker.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Next up are continued hearings under notice of intent. The first one is 78 Squibnocket, which has been continued until 11/18. Therefore, that brings us to Cameron Kodaka, 13 Fells Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to reconstruct an existing patio, construct elevated access stairs with a platform over the coastal bank, abandon an existing path, and reestablish native vegetation within the path, manage invasive plants, and to install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am about to promote Teresa Sprague and where did Mike Borselli? Oh, there he is. It's like, where did he go? He's right there. And Mike Borselli up to present their revisions.
Okay, before you do, Betsy, can we have a quorum, please?
So everyone except Maury is still on this quorum.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant along with Teresa Sprague. This is a continued hearing. Subsequent to the last hearing, we met with your staff on site to review some details and clarify some matters. We made revisions to the patio and some additional labeling for the access stairway. And we're going to go through these revisions. With your permission, I'm going to share my screen briefly to go over the access stair revisions. And then I'm going to turn it over to Teresa, and then we're both here for questions.
Okay. Go ahead.
So to refresh your memory, the project involves a reconfiguration of the existing patio, some supplemental mitigation plantings, some relocation of some previously required mitigation, and the access stairs over the coastal bank. So I'm going to focus on fairly simple revisions to the plan. We did some research on removable lightweight aluminum stairways and platforms, and have highlighted on the plan in blue. I'm zooming in so you can see it. It's a small area of the access stairs. The access stairs are here, and they're labeled as 2 4-foot by 8-foot removable stair sections, and they're pre-manufactured lightweight aluminum. And then adjacent to those are 2 4x8 sections of a platform that is for storage of the kayaks and canoes adjacent to the stairway. I highlight those also in profile view so you can see the sections that are intended to be removed. That sums up the revisions made by my office, and I will turn it over to Teresa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Good evening, Teresa Sprague with Blue Flex Design. I'm Jamie. With your permission, can I share the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Share my desktop. Okay, you should be looking at a revised plan for the proposed patio layout. We met with Jen, Kevin, and Alyssa on September 29th after our last hearing to review our options for redesigning the layout of the patio. And we came up with a solution that we think meets the regulations, as well as a good option for relocating and reinstating the previous mitigation that was required back in, I believe it was 2005. I'm showing right now an Excel spreadsheet that I shared with everybody where we went through the existing conditions, the proposed conditions, and the previously required mitigation. So while we're looking at this, we have an existing condition situation where we have an existing patio, landing and timber wall, which totals 275 square feet. And then an existing stepping stone path to the north of the patio that runs along the north side of the property that totals 92 square feet. So we have a total existing hardscape area of 367 square feet. And what we've done here is we have redesigned the patio so that we're providing an equal amount of coverage. So we're relocating the layout or redesigning the layout of the patio, but we're not increasing the square footage of impervious surface. So we are continuing to propose a wall, and I will show you a section of that quickly. The total of that is 71 square feet. There is a reconstructed landing when you walk out of the sliding doors that equals 26 square feet. And then we are relocating the pavers in this area. So we're removing that brick patio that totals 275 square feet. And we're redesigning this so that we've got reconstructed pavers that total about 4 square feet each, which totals 264 square feet. So the total proposed reconstructed hardscape in this area equals 361 square feet, which is a 6 square foot decrease over the existing conditions. In addition to that, we're proposing in the area where there's currently a seating area with a fire pit, those same pavers, which total 48 square feet, which require 3-to-1 mitigation because they're within the 50-foot no disturb zone or 50-foot zone A in Falmouth. However, those new patio pavers do not get any closer to the resource area than the existing primary structure, which I'm showing on the screen right here. So that 3-to-1 mitigation requires 3-to-1 requires 144 square feet of mitigation, which is to be located in the path that we're proposing to abandon, that existing path. In addition to that, we have the previous mitigation that was required as per the BSS design. The mitigation that's proposed to be reinstated. So I want to make clear that the mitigation that's currently existing from that 2005 plan is the mitigation that's located directly up against the structure. There is this section of mitigation that was required under that 2005 plan that is actually not existing. So this is area where we're showing this little triangular hatch that's currently lawn on a slope. So what we're proposing here is to not only relocate this area, but reinstate mitigation that was supposed to have been existing, but was not existing when the Kodakas purchased the property. So we've got 212 square feet of that mitigation proposed to be reinstated or relocated to the north of the dwelling, and then this area is shown in blue. And then an additional 102 square feet of that mitigation to be reinstated or relocated in that existing path, which totals 102 square feet for that 314 square feet of mitigation. I'd like to share a quick illustration of what we're proposing to do here. So this is the existing grade. This is the landing when you first step out of the house, and this is the proposed grade. And this is the seating wall, retaining wall, which we're proposing to construct in order to prevent any additional intrusion into the previous buffer zone. And just very quickly to go over the way we're proposing to construct this is there would be a layer, a 2 to 4 inch thick layer of 3/4 bluestone, which would then be covered with landscape fabric. The pavers or the tiles would be laid directly on top of that fabric, and then all around it would be filled with loam, and the area would be planted so there would be fescue grass mix in between each one of the pavers. So with that, I will stop sharing unless you'd like me to share in order to ask questions.
No, if you would stop sharing, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jen, do you want to begin?
Yeah, Teresa, how does the patio not move closer to the resource area than the present primary structure?
Well, with the proposed new patio. So we're proposing 48 additional square feet over the square footage of what's currently existing. And that does not move any closer to the resource area than the primary structure. We are proposing, there is an existing square footage, which I was just showing in those calculations on that Excel spreadsheet. And we are proposing to redesign that. But it does not increase in square footage over what's currently existing in the existing patio layout.
And what are this is creative, but I don't know if I can buy it. What's the difference between the spacing on the tiles?
So there are about 4 inches plus between each one of those tiles that will support existing vegetation. So similar to what we discussed in the field regarding.
We discussed grass pavers. We did not discuss.
This is similar.
No, it's mostly tile.
The reason grass pavers, after considering that, won't work here is the goal is for them to be able to put out a dining table and chairs in this area. And unfortunately, the way that grass paved, the concrete or ACB, which is articulated concrete block, won't work in this particular area is because when people are pulling chairs in and out, it's going to sink in those little holes in between. This just actually provides slightly more of a surface so that you could actually pull out a chair and have it seated on a level surface so you're not sinking in and tipping over. But yet it does not increase the amount of impervious surface over what's currently existing in that area.
Basically, if we look at your old plan and your new plan, it looks exactly like the old plan, except we're adding tiles with 4 inches near even more tiles.
So they're basically.
I mean, no, let me talk, Teresa.
Sure.
You talked over me. We did not discuss tiles, so this is not what we discussed in the field. We discussed grass pavers. These are tiles with 4 inches between them, and you think that's going to support loam and that's going to have grass growing through it?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. When you think about
it's still moving. It's the same design you had on the last patio, which I said was moving closer. And I understand your clients are at a limitation here, but they purchased the property. They knew what they were purchasing. The other question I have is we're now keeping the existing mitigation up against the structure. We're not going to relocate that. How is that going to be? How is that going to be cared for?
It will be allowed to naturalize in perpetuity. So right now
it's being cut right now.
Right. So the vegetation that's up against the structure, of course, is being pruned in order to maintain it and keep it from growing up into the structure. Once it's relocated into the areas that we're showing, it will be allowed to naturalize in perpetuity. It will not be pruned or anything like that. In addition to
The
that,
ones up against the structure, isn't that really up against that window that we accidentally almost peered into while we were there?
yes, so that's that area.
So that's not going to be pruned?
No, that's all being relocated. So
I
that's
thought you
being
have a big
removed
arrow
from that
here
area
that
entirely.
says, previously approved existing mitigation planting area to remain.
It says existing mitigation planting to be relocated to areas shaded in blue. Mitigation planting that was previously required but does not currently exist will be
No, that's not the
relocated in
area I'm
areas shaded.
talking about. I'm talking about the area just. I don't even see an arrow, north arrow in here. Just north of that, around that corner. You have an arrow, previously approved mitigation, existing mitigation planting areas to remain.
Oh, correct. Right. Yes.
So all that concern about the mitigation not being, well cared for or really doing well, that's all that concern and it has gone away now.
So the area that we were standing in front of for that window was actually to the south of that, and it's within the area of the retaining wall when we were looking in at the property owners on their Zoom meeting. That's actually, if I could share the screen again, I can point that out to you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
It's just a really difficult project, and we're trying to put a square on hold.
Yep. Yeah, so the area that that we were looking at, that we were standing in the window, and I don't know if you can see my cursor. I just highlighted that in blue so you can sort of see my cursor. We were standing right here. That's
Okay.
that window that we were standing at. So that is proposed to be relocated.
Of course. Again, unfortunately, my comments are going to remain the same, because if I look at this plan and I look at the previous plan, we have the gray area where this quote unquote patio is, now that it's not a concrete patio, it's a tile patio with 4 inches between each tile that we're somehow miraculously going to grow grass in, but we can't go grass in the grass pavers because the moving of the furniture is going to disturb it, but it won't disturb this grass. My comments are going to remain the same. You got a tough site, Teresa.
So I'm happy to put up the proposed versus the existing just for comparison, if that's possible.
Well,
So,
you can see the existing underneath the proposed.
I mean, I'm sorry, the previously proposed versus what's currently proposed. So this is what we brought to you the last time. And we were proposing a full patio throughout this area here. It's shown in gray. So if you can see my cursor, I just highlighted in blue. And then, sorry. And then this is what's currently proposed. So we are spacing those out in order to provide planting in between the pavers, but with enough paver space so that a table is able, and chairs are actually able to sit on this, and people could pull a chair out and sit on a chair without concerns about the chair leg sinking or tipping or anything like that. So that was what we were previously proposing.
It looks the same to me. It looked the same area, the same exact area. You're just reducing your square footage by allowing this 4-inch spacing.
Yes. So what our goal was to make sure that we were not increasing the amount of impervious surface within the 50-foot buffer over what was currently existing closer to the resource area. So we are, of course, proposing to increase by putting...
And how do you suppose, Teresa, we monitor the grass in these pavers? How do you propose we enforce that grass grow between these pavers?
Well, if the grass isn't growing at the end of 3 years, then you wouldn't sign off on a certificate of compliance.
And then would we have them rip up the patio?
Well, I would say
I'm
that
asking
if
the
they want to
question.
keep that patio, it would be in their best interest to make sure that the grass is continuing to grow between the pavers. I mean, we do installations where we're doing walkways, etc., that are laid in grass with grasses or ground covers growing in between all the time. So it's not unusual. We've got a good 4+ inch base layer of loam or compost loam to grow that grass mix in, and then it's entirely pervious underneath. So
On gravel, you're laying your gravel, your blue
we're
stone.
laying the gravel, and then we are
Laying
going to
what are you laying, a cloth?
Just a typical landscape fabric, which biodegrades
Black
over
landscape
time.
fabric.
Yep. And as we know, landscape fabric does not prevent anything from growing up through it, nor does it prevent roots from growing down into it. So
And we don't like landscape fabric. We've been telling people they can't put landscape fabric in the buffer zone. I'm looking for my scale and I seem to have lost it.
So we could certainly use some sort of biodegradable erosion control fabric in between.
I'm just going to illustrate 4 inches.
Yeah, that's typical. That's correct. No, we're not. I mean,
I really think it's
here without
it's
a doubt.
basically the same area, the same design. You just have grass in between that's in reality not going to be there in 5 years. So that's all the questions and comments I have. I'm sorry, Teresa. I know you tried on this one. I would have much preferred to see true grass pavers in there. I could have been a little bit more supportive of that, as we discussed in the field. But this I can't be in support of. I can just see this kind of design just haunting me for the next 5 years. So that's all the questions I have. So is there any plan to try to kind of on the plantings that are going to remain, let's go on something I can talk about. The plantings that are going to remain next to the building, Teresa.
The plantings in the area that were in front of the window where we were standing.
No, I'm not talking about in front of the window. Now I'm talking around the corner where the ones that are going to remain.
We're not proposing to remove anything outside of the area but can I also just add for the commission's benefit that on top of this particular proposal, the property owners are proposing to do invasive plant management and restoration of the entire bank. And in addition to that, I can't say, because in 2005, there was supposed to have been mitigation planting in there. When the Kodakas purchased the property, and I first met with these clients before they actually closed on this property, and before I was aware that there was any previously approved mitigation, nothing has changed. And so mitigation was required, and it's not currently existing, and it wasn't because the current property owners have removed it. And not only that, there's a significant amount of exotic vegetation, mainly hydrangeas, etc., located on the coastal bank that we're proposing to remove and transplant. So in addition to this, they're proposing a significant amount of work. What they're requesting the commission to consider is, can they make this patio space usable so that they could have a dining area out on this patio space without increasing the amount of impervious surface? And after our last conversation, without increasing the amount of pervious surface any closer to the resource area than what's currently existing. And that's what we're requesting the commission to consider.
Yeah, ethical, guys.
Jen, you good?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Steve, we're going to start with you.
I don't have any additional comments.
Thank you. Peter.
I don't have any additional comments.
Pat.
No additional comments.
Mark.
Any additional comments either?
Kevin.
No comments.
Courtney.
And why can't that entire area just be lawn? People sit on lawns all the time.
That's true. Again, in this area that we were showing where we're proposing the pavers is their hope is to be able to put a good sized table out there to entertain guests with grass and be able to pull chairs and just have a level surface where they can sit and people can sit comfortably and not be concerned about tipping or sinking into lawn. That's the only reason that they're looking for some stable surface that they can have in that area.
Well, I mean, based on my own experience, I have an area outside that I use entertain on all the time. It's just grass. We put tables and chairs on it and none of us tip over, at least from uneven surface. So, I'm not terribly sympathetic.
Anything else?
No.
Betsy?
I have no comment.
Excellent. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Nope, not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right. What's your pleasure?
Well, if they're not asking for continuance, I'll put a motion on the table to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Pretty, aye.
Maury? Oh, sorry, Maury. Pat?
Aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve? It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Borselli. Thank you, Ms. Sprague.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah. There's mine.
Next up, Scott Tynell, 163 Bay Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct shellfish aquaculture within Rands Canal and Megansett Harbor. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Attorney Brodsky up on behalf of the applicant and the applicants Alex Tynell and Scott Tynell. Wait.
Betsy, can we have the quorum, please?
Yep, so everybody's still on the quorum except Maury and Pat.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Brodsky, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm an attorney with Drowan, Tacho, and Morgan in Hingham, and I represent Scott and Alex Tynell. I know it's late, and I'm likely the last person you want to hear from, so I'm going to be brief and then turn this over to Scott Tynell. After the last public hearing on September 2nd, we had two deliverables. First, we were requested to provide additional details regarding the oyster bag suspension system for the proposed aquaculture project, more detail regarding the float and the upweller saltwater return. And we submitted 3 detailed sketches, which Scott will explain. Scott also has some additional photographs, which he may or may not display, depending on the information that you request. And second, we were asked to provide a written storm plan to deal with the upweller in the event of a storm event. And so we provided that information. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, if I can turn this over to Scott Tynell, who I believe wishes to share his screen with you.
Okay, thank you. Tynell?
All right, thank you.
I'll share the screen on behalf of my father, Scott, to help him out, and then he can comment on the matter. So the first picture we have here is the proposed piece of land in front of 163 Bay Road, which would be the Rands Canal portion where the floating bags that we were discussing last meeting would be. We wanted to take this picture to show at a low tide the water and the channel for reference, as there was some concern about if there would be the ability for the bags to float. In addition, I also wanted to share this picture, which is one of the floating bags that we are proposing to use. As you can see, it's about 4 3/4 inches in height. And in the next picture, you'll be able to see we floated this alongside the existing dock on the show roughly how much. You can see at least half of it is above water, and we added a brick additional width for demonstration of just how buoyant these bags are and how limited the draft is on this floating bag. So really, all that is needed is 2 inches or less of water for these bags to float. With that being said, we also proposed, we updated the drawings per the request of the board to show the outflow from the upweller system that would be placed on land. What we proposed is there was some concern that the discharge from the upweller could cause a current that would adversely affect the land underwater, as which we have changed the design from traditionally just one outflow pipe that would flow directly into the ocean. We've diverted it into 2 pieces, so you'd have one that would go, parallel to the ocean, as well as one at a roughly 45-degree angle to spread out that current and reduce it. Therefore, there would be no undermining on the dirt. But keeping in mind with the previous picture, where that discharge pipe would be at the end of this dock, and as you can see, it's multiple feet deep, so there'd be feet of buffer between ocean and land below. And then in regards to the storm plan requested, we reached out to other aquaculture sites that have proposed their plans, and normally a storm plan is rather basic in nature, stating that in the events of a severe storm being a Category 1 hurricane or higher, that the equipment would be placed off-site to prevent any damage to nearby areas and properties. We'd also, the Sea Grant Sea Grant has, since Hurricane Sally, they have, in conjunction with some colleges in the area, proposed standardized plans for storm prep. We plan on using that for any severe storms. It's regularly available, and it's very well adopted down in other areas that have aquaculture. So on a storm basis, it's the basics of tying up your lines, making sure the helix anchors are secured properly in the initial installation, making sure clips there's no corrosion or rust and things like that. Since that's a standardized process and that would fall under general maintenance, we didn't feel the need to put that in the storm plan, as our storm plan was strictly suggesting the fact that in a severe storm that we would take our gear and remove it from the site to prevent any damages. Those were the issues or the areas that you guys had wanted additional information. Happy to answer any questions as they come up.
Thank you.
And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Jen and/or Kevin?
Do the board want to see the updated plan on the screen? Alex, can you share your updated plan? If not, I can do that for you. Thank you.
Yep. You'll be able to see, I can zoom it in a little bit if you guys need to.
Thank you.
So I think that was one of the things. How about the other view of the plan, Mr. Tennell?
I don't have the original one that we submitted. I don't have a copy of on this laptop. I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, is that something you want me to bring up on the screen?
Let's see what the consensus is,
Okay.
unless there's something you wanted to point out.
No, no, not at all. I just didn't know if the board wanted to see the plan.
Do you have anything?
No, I don't have any additional questions. I don't have any additional questions or comments. I do have an email that we received late that they requested that we read into the record, so I will do that, but
Okay.
is that Mr. Chairman?
Alex, if you
Kevin?
would stop sharing. Thank you.
So I think,
Betsy.
Alex, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I have no questions. I looked at the plan.
Okay. Courtney,
No questions.
Kevin,
No questions.
Mark.
Well, the little sketch you showed was interesting, but where it shows the outweller, I was sort of concerned about that. You certainly don't want it pointing down. There's only about 2.5 feet of water there at low tide, so you'll be scouring. You probably might want to reorient that or something to get the upweller discharge a little less likely to scour at the end of the float. That's all.
Thank you. Peter,
No questions.
Steve. Okay, Jen, do you want to read that in? Is that what
I
you
will
wanted?
read it in. It was from A.M. Wilson Associates. Based on the 925 plan revision, the return water pipe will probably be on the bottom at mean low tide, since the plan shows the section of the float is located at water depths are 12 inches to 18 inches at mean low water. This will cause unnecessary scour in turbidity and contradiction to both state and local regs. The bathymetry on the plan has yet to be updated. The storm preparation plan is entirely lacking in detail and therefore totally insufficient for its purpose. All my September 29th, 20 comments remain relevant. Please note my concerns to the commission at tonight's hearing. Thank you for your consideration, Arlene M. Wilson.
And we all got those comments from September. So, is there any public chat comments, questions?
There are no public chat comments at this time.
Okay. Does anybody have anything to add?
I'll make a motion
Okay,
to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Gladfelter.
Bird, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing and take it under advisement. There's nothing else. I'm gonna take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Renee, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve. It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Tynell and Mr. Tynell. And I missed somebody, Mr. Brodsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience this evening.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Frank and Donna Skelly, 369 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise, RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling and to construct a new single-family dwelling, to add a new Title V septic system and to reconfigure the driveway.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm promoting Mike Borselli, who I inadvertently booted out the last hearing. I've just.
You're a glutton for punishment.
Did I get him? There he is.
I had my feelings, hurt my feelings. I thought.
No, I always try to look and see if you guys have other hearings, and I just missed that one. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. For the record, again, Mike Borselli, I represent the applicant Donna Skelly. This was a continued hearing. We've talked about this project. We went through basically all the details, and it's come down to just the area of storage that you would be comfortable approving. So the current plan, we've submitted a revised site plan and a revised lower floor plan that the architect designed, and we indicate on the plan that we're going to do some minor changes that we hope will allow you to accept the storage area we're proposing. With that, I'm asking to share the screen, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Jamie?
Yep.
Just so you know, everybody's on the quorum except Maury and Pat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have asked you that already.
Oh,
So-
no, Pat's on it. Pat's still on it, sorry.
Pat's on it.
Pat is on it. Maury's
Yeah,
the
I
only
thought so.
one who's not on it.
So the revisions to the plan are fairly simple. So I'm zooming in on the area of focus. First, we're proposing to remove this shed and keep this shed. The lost storage for this shed, the area of it would be incorporated underneath the building here, along with another small area. So if this area is squared off and allowed to be enclosed, it's 280 square feet of storage, which is basically 14 by 20. It's equivalent to a one-car garage, basically. Everything in this area in white would be open to the atmosphere. No breakaway panels, no enclosures. This is open. This is an at-grade patio, and this notch here is open. There's no enclosure here. This is open. The lighter yellow is not storage, but it's the area necessary for entry, stairways, elevator only. So I think the staff report makes reference to if you combine the true storage area in the area necessary for stairs and elevator and entry, the total is 482 square feet. But of that 482, 280 only is actual storage. And it's to account for the fact that this shed's going to be removed and the storage that it provided is now under the building. With another small area of storage, it just seemed logical to make this rectangular area storage. And so that's all we did, and I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I mean, the staff's just gonna stay consistent and say my original comments remain. And just to that little open area that Mike showed as being open, it actually has walls on 3 sides of it. So it really isn't truly open. It's open on one side. So it's like a little kind of cubby hole, open cubby hole in there. So they can still use that area as storage. So just to remain consistent, the staff's gonna say that, we recommend just enclosing the space for the mudroom, the stairs, and the elevator. Just to stay consistent with our past comments. The board has allowed like an area such as 400 square feet. This is 482. Next time it'll be 520. It's always that incremental creep that keeps getting larger that we see. So those are the staff's comments. Unless
you.
there's anything to add.
Okay. Betsy?
Okay, well, here's the case. I don't agree with you completely because they're eliminating a shed.
That's fine.
So instead of having.
How many square feet is the shed again, Mike?
So it's 130 square feet.
130 square feet, and the area you're going to storage is 150 square feet more than that?
Yeah. So it's like
So there you go.
it's like 2
No,
sheds.
but the stair thing, if you add the entryway and stairs and you add the storage area, it's 480 some odd.
82,
So
482.
you subtract, what is it, 150 of that shed, it's well less than 400, which we've allowed in many other areas. So I don't have a problem. I don't have any question. I understand what you did, and I appreciate the fact that you put some effort into it.
Thank you.
Courtney,
First observation question is I'm not sure why you leave that little tiny area next to the elevator open. Why aren't you enclosing that and including it?
I can't answer that, Courtney,
You're
because
enclosed
it's the architect's design. I wish I had an answer, but I don't. It was just an area that was not going to have an enclosure on that one side.
Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that either, I think that should be considered part of the enclosed space. And I think it should be made that way. I think you need to, because I think this space needs to be tightened up. And second of all, we're talking about, you know, I gotta side with Jen on this. I know you're trying to get as much storage out of this as you possibly can. And I certainly understand that. And if I were in your shoes, I'd do the same thing. So, you know, that's okay. But I'm sitting on the regulatory side. And 400 square feet is not what you've got. What you're proposing is a net enclosed space exceeding 400 square feet. So I think, you know, you got to go back to the drawing boards and get this area down to 400 square feet. That's my observation. How you do it, that's your issue.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, we don't want to continue this hearing.
well,
But,
let's hear what everybody has to say.
okay.
Courtney, anything else? Courtney, you set?
I've made my comment, that's all.
Okay. I agree with what Betsy said. I think if you take it all into play, it's fine. And I don't think we should be designing the project. And I think that the applicants put some effort into answering our questions. So, Kevin,
I basically, when I went, after reviewing the material, all of that didn't confuse the heck out of me, because there's so many drawings of the proposed dwelling. I took a ride down there, and it occurs to me, especially if you just go down Edgewater West, that this may be the only project for some time in that area that's going to wind up on piers. There's a lot of very nice homes, and I don't see the kind of turnover that you might see in some other areas. So I was very much inclined to vote yes, and I just might do that again. But the idea that you are using the space from the shed sort of ignores the fact that the original proposal, both sheds were to disappear. I recognize that there was considerably more space.
No, they weren't. They weren't both going to disappear. One was going to be kept to keep a tractor.
Oh, then I apologize. I was under the impression that both of them were to be removed.
No, the woman who's Mike's applicant made it clear that they wanted to keep one of the sheds.
Okay.
If I could clarify, very, very originally, we were going to remove both when we thought we could enclose the whole bottom. But then once we discovered we couldn't put the tractor under the building, that they wanted to keep the one small shed,
Okay.
Eliminate the other one.
Okay, I feel better about it then. Thank you. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, I'm kind of confused and I don't see where this 400 square feet number comes from. Certainly not in our regulations, certainly not in FEMA regulations. This area was one of those which ended up in a velocity zone, the added on velocity zone for Falmouth, not a FEMA velocity zone. And there isn't any fetch. I don't personally see any issue with any items on this property getting washed out into the ocean or under the marsh because there's too much storm. So I personally have no problem at all with whatever storage area they want to put in, and certainly 400 square feet is just fine with me. That's all.
Thank you. Pat?
A couple of questions, and I don't know who's the proper person to answer it, but it's my understanding that the velocity zone requires that there be breakaway, and it's not as if the commission has developed a requirement for 400 square feet that is an additional regulation. It's an exception. Like, okay, let's try to accommodate. So it's kind of the inverse of having regulations that come out of nowhere. This is an attempt to help the landowner. And if the commission has developed 400 square feet as their gold standard in terms of an allowance, it's better to be consistent. The second question, I guess that was just me talking, but the second question I have is, I can't, I'm a little confused by the numbers here. So Mike, if you were to give me a figure for the shed that's coming down, it's 130 square feet, is that correct?
Yes.
And if we were to take your 2 yellow blocks plus the section called open, what would be the total square feet there?
Can I share my screen again, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Let me just zoom in a minute. Sorry, I know this is painful to watch. Especially when my mouse doesn't want to cooperate. So you can see the little darker yellow color, 14 by 20, 280 square feet. That's the true storage. And I'm not going to disagree that this area here that's labeled open is I'm not going to argue about it. It could be storage, but it's open to the atmosphere. It's not enclosed by any doors. There would be a wall here. So I'm going to go over to the architectural plan because it's probably clearer with the dimensions. So that yellow area, the big yellow area, the 280 square feet is right here. The stairway, switchback stairs, the elevator, and this total about 200 square feet. Now, this other area that you asked about, the open area, it measures 6 by 8, so it's 48 square feet. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that does. It's 528, and if you subtract 130, we come down to 398. Bingo.
It was kind of thought out, but that was when we thought you were allowing, we were trying to say that the whole area is about 400 square feet, but we wanted the 280, the big area, usable area, to be available for storage.
Sure, but just in terms of the fundamental notion that you shouldn't have an enclosed area beneath the house in the velocity zone, but that the commission has evolved this standard to allow up to 400 square feet. I agree with the other commissioners' comments that the trade off of the shed makes sense. And so I say 280 plus 200 plus 48 is 528. less 130 is 398. Is that right?
I think you have it right, yep.
So we're up to 400. So it looks good to me. That's my only thought,
Excellent.
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chair.
Peter,
I agree with Betsy.
Steve,
Still like the project. I continue to support it.
excellent. Mike, I'm just going to ask the question, if they're, if you will, willing to give up the shed in lieu of this storage, would they accept a condition that they can't put a new shed up?
Yes,
Because, you know, a 200 square foot shed, you wouldn't need a permit.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, just to ask.
Yes.
Do you want that to be a condition?
Should be a condition.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, and if they're willing to trade it, then, you know, and
That
I'm
was
not
the
accusing
intention.
anybody. Can I speak?
Sorry.
Accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying that if they're giving it up, they've got to be giving it up, you know, in perpetuity. So, because they're getting it otherwise. So I just want that question, you know.
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. You can make it a condition.
Are there any comments on the public function?
No.
I'm gonna make a motion to close this hearing and take it under advisement.
Third, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Pretty, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Boselli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. Have a good evening.
Can I remove you now, Mike?
Yes, please, please,
Okay.
by all means. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Next up, Thomas J. Scarduzio, trustee, 0/192 Meadow Neck Road, assessors map, plat number 31, parcel, lot number 04005002C, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove an existing driveway, to relocate an existing shed, and to construct a single-family dwelling, attached garage, upper-level deck, Title V septic system, and pickleball court with associated grading and landscaping. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this hearing was continued for DEP number only, which we have received.
okay, and I have the quorum, Betsy, as everybody but Mark?
No,
No?
people must have been missing on people. Peter and Courtney and Maury
Oh, that,
were in the thunder cloud during
Okay.
this. So it's Kevin, Betsy, Maury. Oh, excuse me, Maury. You were here. Kevin, Betsy, Maury, Steve, Jamie, Pat.
okay. All right, so it's only for the DEP number. We have that now?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments in the chat function?
Yeah, Mark isn't on this one either.
Got that.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
I'll second Gladfelter.
All right.
Harlow Hawk.
We have a motion and a second to close this hearing. No further questions. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Steve. Steve, I'm sorry, I missed you.
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Next up is a continued hearing under an enforcement order. Robert Burke, 326 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted construction, removal of vegetation, and installation of impervious surface within jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant, the property owner is requesting a continuance until November 18th. And just so the board knows, we did meet out there with Mr. Borselli. Mark Kaspersik and I met out there with Mr. Borselli, Attorney Wall, and the property owner. They've completed their survey and we're comparing it to a previous survey they have. That has been completed. There is a lot of mitigation that is going to be required to be planted if they keep the property in its current conditions. So they're working right now to kind of come up with a plan. So some of what is existing out there, existing driveway, whatever, they're coming up with a plan to remove some of the elements that are currently on the site and mitigate for some of them. So they're in the process of doing that. They're moving forward. So the staff recommends, allowing the continuance until the 18th. It's going to be an enforcement night on the 18th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this enforcement hearing until 11:18. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Obscurity, aye.
Maury?
Follow Hawks Eye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve? All right, that is unanimous, is continued until 11:18. Next up, vote order of conditions. First item, Joe Jackson, 0 Bywater Court, Lot 16, Falmouth, Mass. And we need to clarify the quorum for voting, please.
So it's Kevin, Betsy, Jamie, Steve, and Pat.
Hold on, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. Betsy, one more time. Betsy, Jamie, Kevin.
Betsy, Jamie, Kevin, Steve, and Pat.
Thank you.
Chairman? Yeah, just point of order. On the version of the agenda, I have that there's a request to reopen the hearing by Joe Jackson.
Yep.
Courtney, that was removed.
It was removed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it was removed because of the they weren't able to notify abutters.
Okay, so.
Received that request late Friday. We put it on the agenda, and after reconsulting with council, we removed it because of they couldn't notify abutters in time, and we couldn't notify as a public notice in time, so it was impossible to put.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Therefore, we are moving forward with a vote on order conditions.
So as the board remembers, this is the Bywater Court parcel. It's pretty, to say the least, vacant lot, all lawn. They were proposing a modular type home. The issue was that it was extending over, therefore cantilevering, and therefore encroaching on that zone A of land subject to title action, that's 75 foot, so it wasn't encroaching into that. Because of that, staff's position is it doesn't meet the Riverfront Acts, because the Riverfront Act will allow, shall allow the construction of a single family home if it meets all other state and municipal regulations or laws. And in staff's opinion, because this encroaches on that, obviously encroaches on that one A buffer zone to the and subject to title action, therefore it does not meet your regulations. They did come up with an extensive planting plan to try to improve the wildlife habitat on the lot. Obviously, no one can argue that it doesn't improve the wildlife habitat on the lot. Unfortunately, it is encroaching on that 75-foot buffer to that no disturbance A zone. I think that pretty much sums it up. The planting was going to be done in 2 phases. Phase 1, a majority of the plantings were going to go in, and then there was a phase 2. Other than that, then there was the dewatering basin that was being proposed as part of the project.
I have a comment, if you want me to start, Jamie.
Sure.
Okay, well, my comment is I see this differently. This is a buffer regulation, but it's a previously altered buffer. And they actually overcame the presumptions of the effect of this. They did it. There'll still be lawn underneath that section. And they did a shadow study that showed that it got sufficient light at all times of the year there. And so I think we can make the findings that this overcomes the presumption of the importance of the buffer to land subject to title action. And I think if you look at all the functions that a buffer should fulfill, it's not gonna affect the little section that this thing hangs over, that part of the buffer. And it's also going to give you a 40, I don't know, 35, 40-foot buffer where there's no buffer at all now. So that's my analysis of this.
All right. Anybody else?
The only thing I would say on that one is, did they provide evidence that was previously altered in accordance with our regs?
Well, yeah, I didn't mention that, but I don't know that they did that.
Okay. I don't think they did, but okay.
But I mean, it certainly is an altered buffer.
Oh, absolutely. You think?
That's why I say you and I ought to go into
lawn with a goose population.
We ought to go into business together. Jen and I walked 14 miles on the canal on Sunday. So we had a lot of stuff to talk about or argue about, I should say.
You guys need a life.
It was wonderful. The whole world was there.
We had fun.
All right. Does anybody have anything special they want to add or say?
I have a comment, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I think, well, one, I would never disagree with Betsy in terms of a scientific analysis, but I have to go along with Jen on this in terms of the application of the regulations. The burden of proof on this, when somebody submits a project, we usually apply, and it's one of the reasons why these regulations are so well done. There are performance standards, and the performance standard says the regulations say that if you comply with the performance standard, you're deemed to be protecting the resource area values, and your project can be approved under the regs. If you don't comply with the regulations, as is the case in this one, you can rebut the presumption of significance, which is where Betsy's going. But there's also a provision in the regulations that says you cannot rebut that presumption if your alteration of the Zone A area was done post, I think the date is April 2, 1979. And in this instance, when somebody's rebutting the presumption of significance, the burden is on them, not on the commission, to prove it. Now, if they didn't submit any evidence that this alteration was done prior to 79, that's a fatally flawed analysis. But I also think it's really important to, as I keep hearing since I've been on this commission, not go down a slippery slope, finding minor issues. And to say that this is a small area or encroaching into the zone A, I don't think is a reasonable analysis. And I know Betsy's doing it differently. She's saying that this zone A doesn't have capacity to perform the resource area values, but I don't think this landowner can prevail with that because, as Jen pointed out, we don't know when that land was altered.
Except we do know that it's a long, that neighborhood's been there for, I had a friend who lived there, that neighborhood's been there for well over 50 years. And it was all clear cut for a long time. It's amazing there are any trees there.
Okay, but is that evidence in the record? I don't know. I just throw that out there. And one of the things that there is also, there's this provision in the regulations, I took down a couple of notes, that says that if the zone A is naturally vegetated, undisturbed condition, the width of the no disturbance zone is presumed to provide the minimal acceptable level of protection. So even if it's a totally natural vegetative zone A, that's the...
But it's nothing. It's a zone A with lawn in it.
Well, that's my point, that the regulations acknowledge that even if it's naturally vegetated, that's the minimal protection that is required under the bylaw. Anyway, I go along with the staff that we should be, not making exceptions here and there, but that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Okay, do we want to just take a vote?
I'll make a motion to accept this as discussed. And we can either say yes, or we can say no.
We should say yes so that we know what we're voting on, vote to approve. And then we have,
that's,
yeah.
You always put a positive.
Motion I put a positive motion on the table.
Oh, I misunderstood you.
Yes.
So the motion is to grant the order of conditions.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Makes sense because I'm going to vote against it, I guess.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Just move it along. Second.
Exactly. All right, so again, this is a motion to grant an order of conditions. Betsy?
Yes.
Matthews, no. Kevin?
No. Brian, no. Sorry.
Pat?
Harris, no.
Steve?
Can't hear you, Steve.
Patton, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That was
Yes.
clear. Thank you. All right, the vote is 3-2, so it does not
Doesn't
pass.
pass. Yep.
All right, next up, Frank and Patricia Dundulis, 18 Tajmu Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Jen? I'm sorry, wait a minute. Quorum, if you would, Betsy.
Wait a second. I'm just writing down the other vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, here we are. Tajmu?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Courtney, Kevin, Betsy, Jamie, Steve, Peter, Pat.
Okay, so not Mark, not Mark.
Not Mark, not Maury.
All right.
Missing.
Nope, that's it, I think.
Okay.
All right, Jen, you're up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the project with, just they're shifting two floats. They're in their approved chapter 91 size, their approved size from the Conservation Commission. They're just shifting them down. And they have submitted the revised plan with the water depth and the mooring field, excuse me. That's all.
All right. So, anybody have any comments on this one? Anything special you want to see?
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
Bird second.
Okay, so we'll have a motion and a second to basically issue an order of conditions under standard stuff. Jen? That
Yeah.
makes sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve? Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. We've issued an order of conditions. Next up, Wings Pond LLC, 63 North Falmouth Highway, Falmouth, Mass.
This was to confirm the boundaries of the certified vernal pool and isolated land subject to flooding. Mark worked with the applicant's engineer and our town engineering to get that calculation correct and on the plan. So at this point, the staff is recommending we approve that boundary.
All right. Betsy, can I have the quorum, please?
Yes. Courtney, Kevin, Maury, Betsy, Jamie, Steve, and Pat.
So not Mark.
Well, not Mark and not Peter.
So again, the board is confirming the boundary of the vernal pool, the certified vernal pool, and the boundary of isolated land subject to flooding.
So this isn't really a traditional order of conditions then.
No, it's an ANRAD.
Just
You've done these before where, yeah.
Alienation, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
Bird second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Hello, Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Thank you. That is unanimous. That's it, folks.
I make a motion to adjourn Harlow Hawks.
Bird second.
Gladfelter, third.
We're all comedians.
Oh,
Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bird, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
I wanted to take this. Aye.
It's unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, IT. You can
Thank
stop.
you.
Thank you,
You're
Ed.
on